Welcome, everyone. Before we start our meeting tonight, welcome, everybody. Before we begin, we will have a prayer by Councilman Kemna, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. I'll now call to order the Monday, August 20th, 2018 City Council meeting. Mrs. Donaldson, roll call, please.
Fitzwater. Graham.
Here.
Hensley.
Here.
Hussey. Kimna.
Here.
Mahalovich.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Schreiber.
Present.
Ward. Here. Wiseman.
Present.
Item 3, is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Councilwoman Ward?
Madam Mayor, at this time I would like to make a motion to move off the informal calendar 021 and place it after 5E.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that means the item 2018-21, the School Street Historic District, which is at the on the informal calendar, will be pulled off the informal and taken up after 5E. One other quick thing on the agenda. We have several different items that people may be here to speak about tonight. So we talked about across the hall the possibility that some charter amendments could be placed on the informal. Of course, without having the chance to have that discussion, that decision hasn't necessarily been made, but want to let people know, trying to see if people have signed up to talk about that. We do have someone signed up to speak on number 40, charter change, so a couple of people. Yes, so, which is fine, and want to just let everyone know that we would still welcome that input, and as with anything, it could end up being placed on the informal, so just out of respect for everybody who's here, want to let them know, but still encourage everyone to come and speak during that item on the agenda. All right. And I want to take a moment to recognize Boy Scouts that are here this evening. I think we have some in the back, maybe. Do we have hi there, welcome. Would you like to come up to the podium and say your name and what school you're from? We always like to give our scouts an opportunity to say where they're from, or you can stand up and say where you're from if you'd like, from there. Okay, welcome. Oh, we've got a few of you back here. Oh yeah, definitely come forward, and you can let us know your name and what school you're from, and maybe if you're working on a certain badge, you can just speak right in there into the microphone. Welcome, we're glad to have you all. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Sam Fick. I'm from Jeff City. We're working on the communication merit badge. We have to go to a city council meeting and just observe what's going on.
Well, you picked a good one. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Randy Vassos. I'm from St. Peter's, and I'm also working on the communication merit badge.
Wonderful. Welcome.
My name is Ethan Tobin, and I'm working on the Communications Merit Badge, and I'm from St. Peter's School.
Welcome. We're glad to have all of you and appreciate you being here this evening, and good luck with your badges that you're working on. All right. Item 4, miscellaneous agenda items. We'll invite Mr. Kroll to recognize our outstanding August Employee of the Month Service Award recipient, Becky Hurst.
And I will invite Becky Hurst to come forward and the Director of Human Resources, Gail Strope. This is Becky. That's Gail. So congratulations to Becky Hurst, City of Jefferson Human Resources Specialist, for receiving the City of Jefferson Outstanding Employee Service Award for August 2018. The recognition is not only for the specific examples referenced in the nomination form that I'll be reading in a few minutes, but also in recognition of all the service Ms. Hurst provides to the citizens and employees of the City of Jefferson on an ongoing basis. So, some of the comments that were mentioned in the actually various nomination forms are as follows. Ms. Hurst is always willing to drop whatever she is doing to help others. She helps point each employee in the right direction, whether it is human resources or wellness related. Ms. Hurst is creative and takes the lead when asked to do special projects. She happily steps in when there are human resources or wellness related questions. Ms. Hurst is always welcome, is always timely with her work and helps encourage others to participate in many of the city's activities and events. Ms. Hurst has a positive attitude and always has a smile on her face. She is pleasant to work with, and we can count on her to get things done. Ms. Hurst is an invaluable member of the Human Resources team in the city. In the 3 years Ms. Hurst has been with the city, not only has she cross-trained to learn all aspects of the department, but she has taken the lead in various programs. Ms. Hurst asked if she could create an employee involvement committee to plan events for all other city employees to enjoy. She has taken the lead in chairing the committee, and with the assistance of some dedicated co-workers, the committee has planned and hosted numerous events throughout the year for her co-workers to enjoy. Ms. Hurst's leadership of the committee has done this on a limited budget and with a big smile on her face. Ms. Hurst always acts with professionalism and discretion. In her role, she reviews and receives a great deal of confidential information, and coworkers do not have to worry about their information being shared. She takes ownership of her job responsibilities, ensures that they are completed in a timely manner. Ms. Hurst's significant contributions to the overall quality of life of the city are recognized and appreciated, so congratulations and thanks to Becky Hurst, City of Jefferson Human Resources Specialist, for receiving the City of Jefferson Outstanding Employee Service Award for August 2018. And I know Gail had a few comments she wanted to mention as well.
I think Steve pretty much covered it with the write-up, but I just wanted to add that we truly are blessed to have people like Becky to work with on a daily basis. She really is a champion for her coworkers, for future coworkers, and really for the citizens of Jefferson City. So I'd just like to congratulate you, Becky, on this well-deserved award.
And you have somebody here you want to introduce? Oh, my fiance. Yeah. And you're welcome to come to a council meeting anytime. So, congratulations, Becky.
Yes, congratulations, Becky. You provide outstanding service, and we are so fortunate to have you. All of the wonderful things that you do to help cheer on our city employees. They're so meaningful and much appreciated. So, and again, you're Miss Hurst, but soon to be Mrs., and it's exciting to have your fiance here to support as well. So we're very happy to have you both here. But again, we appreciate it. I know firsthand all the work you do in the front office, oftentimes taking calls that are referred to the mayor, and you do such a wonderful job communicating with constituents when they reach out to the mayor's office, and really appreciate all the extra work that you put into it, and all with such a wonderful attitude and so pleasant. So thank you. We'd like, on behalf of the council, to present you a city coin. So we'll take a picture up here in the front, and then council will come up here too. Congratulations again, Becky. Item 5, public hearings. Item A.
Bill 2018-33, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 3, Advertising and Signs.
Mr. Sanders?
Mr. Barron's going to do this
I'm
tonight,
sorry, Mr.
please.
Barron. Yes, I
Thank
knew
you,
that.
Madam
You told me
Mayor.
that. I forgot. Thank you.
This bill would be a general refresh of Chapter 3 of the City Code, Advertising and Signs. Would be a number of edits, deletions, and additions incorporated into Chapter 3 with the passage of this bill. It is something that has been, staff has spent some time drafting and is a fairly lengthy bill, I think coming in at over 30 pages, as it's a general review of the entirety of Chapter 3 that was undertaken. Most of the amendments fall within Chapter 3, Article 1. The chapter is divided into multiple articles, and the bill is actually a deletion of Article 1 and reestablishment because the number of edits within that article were too numerous to track in the normal strike-through underlined manner. It was largely preempted by recent Supreme Court ruling dealing with temporary signage, and so staff in dealing with the temporary signage issue took the opportunity to do, again, a general refresh of the chapter. And so that's one of the reasons why it's a fairly lengthy bill. And so the effect of the council bill, within the council packet is a 4-page staff summary that tries to outline the changes in the council bill, basically trying to outline the notable changes that are proposed within the council bill. There are a number of minor changes, minor tweaks to definitions and other language. But in general, the council bill accomplishes the 3 things up on the screen. It fixes a number of technical items that have been identified by staff since the last fairly major edits to the sign code were done in 2011. It proposes a fairly small number of changes based on variances in staff experience in processing sign permits, raising the allowable height of building-mounted signs, and a few other items, as outlined again in the 4-page staff report. And then third, addresses a recent Supreme Court ruling pertaining to temporary signage, and that's where the heaviest edits are within the bill. And so, as discussed at the last meeting, this item appeared in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this bill, but with some edits dealing with the number of temporary signs that would be permitted within residential zoning districts, I believe is their primary concern. When researching temporary signage issues, we of course conducted a number of hours of research on this topic before bringing this bill forward. It's fairly common for other cities to have some sort of limit on the number of signs that would be allowed in actually in any setting, especially a residential one. And so the initial draft that went in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission did have limits on the number of signs that would be allowed in residential zoning districts. It differed based on whether it was a political season or not. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted to actually remove that language so that there would be no limit to the number of signs allowed on a residential property. Okay. Staff brought this item up at the last council meeting and proposed actually some language that would actually reestablish some of those limits. So staff drafted a council bill which was introduced at the last meeting that was as the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended, with no limits on the number of temporary signs in residential districts. There'd be still limits on temporary signs in commercial districts. Staff brought forward a proposal to actually reestablish those limits in the form of a council amendment sheet, and then that was approved by the council to actually reestablish the number of temporary signs allowed in a residential district at 10, much higher than the original 4 to 6 that was in the original draft, and then also raise the number of signs that would be allowed in the commercial districts up a little bit. This was done largely based on we had the benefit of it being an election season, being able to drive around and do kind of an informal survey of how many signs are on some of these properties, and knowing what is proposed and whether or not what we see out there during that election season would meet what is proposed with this bill. And what we saw is that it probably wouldn't, and and therefore drafted, kind of came up with those new numbers to reestablish the bar a little bit higher, so that if approved in the form of a substitute bill, we believe that most properties out there would conform to the temporary sign rules that are within that substitute bill. I have a couple slides that break down what would be allowed as far as temporary signage. First deals with commercial and industrial districts. The current code does not allow a lot of the freestanding commercial signage, and this would be no change to that. The current code deals with window signage a little bit differently, and staff would actually propose, the bill proposes to establish that as a percentage of window space, and to allow a minimum amount of building-mounted temporary signage. As far as non-commercial signs, the numbers are 1 per street frontage with a maximum size, but then during an election season, that number increases dramatically for 4 additional signs per street frontage. So for example, a commercial lot on a corner could have basically 10 signs up during an election season. And if you, I believe the best example of that is the corner of Southwest Boulevard and Route C, where we witnessed about that many signs. And so, again, something that would fall into what would be permitted with these amendments. And then also allowing some other things in the downtown district, especially sandwich board signs are somewhat popular. However, right now they're technically prohibited, but to establish them as an allowable form of signage. In the residential districts, the substitute bill again would establish small signs, a maximum of 10 per property. There wasn't necessarily anything incredibly scientific about that, except that it places some sort of cap so that it would prevent someone from using literally an infinite number of signs as the upper limit to the detriment of, visual detriment of the neighborhood. Outside that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Again, the staff summary, the 4 pages, tries to outline the changes. If there's anything specific, I'd be happy to add more color to it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Barron? Councilman Prather?
Did you say originally that P&Z approved it to be unlimited, and then staff changed it, recommended something different, and you went back to P&Z and they approved staff's recommendations?
No. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the limits be stricken. Staff brought that recommendation to the council with another staff recommendation on top of that to reestablish the limits. It did not go back to P&Z.
All right, thank you.
So.
Councilman Graham?
Mr. Momo, if you could you give me the rationale behind this, please?
Sure. Regarding the staff preference to have a limit on temporary signs in residential areas, what we are primarily concerned about, or at least the law department is concerned about, is the weaponization of temporary signs. If it is truly unlimited, then there is no limit that someone could put temporary signs. So, 1,000 signs, 100 signs. You would hate to see someone not use these for expressive purposes, but for the purposes of annoyance or for spite against their neighbors or something like that. And so what staff has come up with is a number that, based on some informal surveys of the city, would accommodate even the most enthusiastic user of temporary signs, but still has an upper limit, so that way signs aren't used for non-expressive purposes, where someone could build a fence with temporary signs, or put hundreds of them to get back at their neighbor for some dispute. That's really our main concern is use of temporary signs for things that have nothing to do with expression of speech. And so we think some sort of cap in residential areas on temporary signs is necessary to prevent those types of really unwanted behaviors.
Further questions? Councilman Hensley?
Thank you. Do we find in either the Supreme Court case that was referenced earlier or anywhere else permission for a cap on the number of signs on residential properties?
So the Reed versus Town of Gilbert, there was a concurring opinion by Judge Alito that referenced the type of regulations that would still be allowed by municipalities, and he made clear to say that the list was not exhaustive. But one example that he gave was the cities could put a regulation that limits the number of signs per mile, and so that is another way to do a limitation on number of signs.
Did you say per mile? I'm sorry.
He said, for example, a city could say no more than X amount of signs per mile of roadway. That's a type of limitation on a number of signs within a given city. I see this as the exact same thing. This is within a yard, a limitation on the number of signs, and falls into a category called a content-neutral time, place, and manner restriction, which comports with the Constitution of First Amendment.
Okay. So Judge Alito agrees. So when that 11th sign goes up, what are we going to do?
Well, it would just go through our regular enforcement program. What we try to do is get voluntary compliance. Most times that 11th sign is going to go up. They didn't realize that that they weren't allowed that 11th sign, and so we would work with them to get that removed. A lot of our enforcement is complaint based, and so there would be a neighbor who would say, hey, there's just a lot of signs there, please come check that out. And then ultimately, if we couldn't get voluntary compliance, it would be like any other type of zoning violation, and we have the municipal court process to address that.
So my guess is that rather than an over-enthusiastic political supporter, we'd probably just first see someone trying to make a point and challenge the limit at any number. Are you fairly confident that at the end of the day we'd prevail when challenged on that provision?
I believe this falls squarely within permissible time, place, and manner restrictions. There's no attempt to look at the content of the sign of what it says in enforcement, and when you do that, you're on the right side of the law. It's just a matter of number of signs.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Wiseman?
Thank you. If we don't have a specific limit on the number of signs and we do allow unlimited signage, do we have a nuisance ordinance that would cover it otherwise if somebody did have 1,000 signs in their yard?
Attempting to enforce through nuisance where a specific law does not have any type of limitation would be extremely difficult. I think you would run into some as applied challenges to your enforcement through nuisance. That would be a real tough hill. That would be an uphill battle to fight.
Any other questions before we open the hearing? Councilman Graham?
Back to Ryan and to city staff. I must echo the words that my colleague Prater said in regards to this going to P&Z and then staff changing that to specify a number. As the sponsor of this bill and as the person who will add the substitute bill, I am not willing to do that based on the fact that it was changed from time it left out of P&Z and came to this body. So I would not be offering a substitute bill to this. So does that mean it needs to go back to P&Z, or we're voting on the original thing that came out of P&Z that says there is no limit?
Back check me on this, Eric, but I believe that if the substitute were not taken up, the city council would be voting on a version of the bill that does not include any limitation on residential signs or residential temporary signs.
Okay. I am not offering a substitute bill to the rest of my colleagues.
Any further questions before we open the public hearing? Okay, Councilman Fitzwater.
The request from planning and zoning also discussed the setback provision. Was that accounted for?
In the residential districts, that was removed. So the bill that is, is before you, has no setbacks for signage in the residential districts. It does still exist in the commercial districts in the text of the bill in the form of a 10-foot front setback from the street line, from the curb line for commercial signage. Staff recommended removal of that setback in the substitute bill, along with an actual increase in the number of signs for commercial areas within the substitute bill. If I may, if there's a desire to not have a limit on the residential districts, one potential route would be to offer up a substitute and remove that language, to strike that single line that would limit the number of signs in the residential districts. The substitute bill tried to accomplish three different things. One of them being reestablishing some sort of number of signs in the residential districts. One being raising the number of signs permitted within the commercial districts. And then the third, removing all language on the setbacks.
So if we didn't do the substitute that we have tonight, we went back to the original bill, it would still include the language that P&Z tried to take out in regards to the setback.
No, they made no mention of setbacks in the commercial.
The original bill, then, how did it discuss the setback provision?
In the commercial or the residential?
In both.
A 5-foot setback in the residential districts from the curb line, and a 10-foot setback in the commercial districts from the curb line.
So if we were to bring up the original bill the way it is, it still has the setback provisions in it.
The bill that's before you, we removed the stuff that was recommended by planning and zoning, the limit on the number of signs in residential districts and the setback within the residential districts. That's all they made the edits to.
If I may, to clarify, the bill that is in front of the council right now, and not the substitute, reflects 100% the recommendation of the P&Z.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, at this time we'll open the public hearing for Bill 2018-33. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on that bill this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and take up Bill 2018-33.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 3, Advertising and Signs.
Is there any further discussion or deliberation on the bill? And everybody's clear on... I don't think there's a substitute offered, so it sounds like it's the original bill, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any further deliberation? Okay, roll call, please.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey, Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Bill passes. Item B.
2018-34, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, adopting a budget and personnel classification plan for the city for the period of November 1st, 2018 to October 31st, 2019, and appropriating money in the city treasury to pay the cost of operating the city government during that period in accordance with the budget.
Mrs. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The operating budget for the period November 1st, 2018 through October 31st, 2019 is been recommended for approval by the mayor. The proposed general revenue budget is projected to be $32,807,390.05. And with additional funding from other funds and for capital projects, it brings the total City of Jefferson budget for fiscal year 2019 to $65,681,530.53.
Thank you. Councilman Prather?
Madam Mayor, as we are still deliberating on the budget, at this time, I would like to put on the informal calendar, please.
Okay, looks like that has been placed on the informal. Any questions of council? And the next budget meeting is this Thursday evening, 5:30. Item C.
2018-35, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, providing for the levy of city taxes and establishing the rate of taxation for the City of Jefferson, Missouri for the year 2018.
Mrs. Miller?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A state statute requires that cities establish their property tax rates on an annual basis. The proposed 2018-2019 budget has been prepared based on the property tax rate for general fund at 46 cents and the fireman's pension rate at 0.961 cents. And that is the same rate as the previous year.
Thank you. Any questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing portion. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on Bill 2018-35? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion and take up Bill 2018-35.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, providing for the levy of city taxes and establishing the rate of taxation for the City of Jefferson, Missouri for the year 2018.
Any council deliberation? Roll call, please.
Graham,
Aye.
Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey, Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Bill passes. Item D.
2018-43, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, changing, amending, and modifying the zoning code of the City of Jefferson by creating a new overlay zoning district to be titled the NR National Register Historic Overlay District, establishing regulations thereof, and amending the zoning map of the zoning code by establishing said district over 7 existing National Register districts.
Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This bill really does two things. So the first thing that it does is that it creates what is called the National Register Overlay District, or for short, the NR District. And then the second thing that it accomplishes, it imposes the NR District over seven areas within the city. And those 7 areas in the city are coterminous with the city's current areas that are on the national, that are historic districts that are on the National Register of Historic Places. What we are trying to accomplish this bill is there are instances in state and federal law where protections are carved out for places that are on the National Register of Historic Places, or historic districts generally. And but occasionally there are situations where it will require cities to take affirmative acts to claim or take advantage of those protections that are afforded to National Register places. And so what this bill is attempting to do is make that affirmative act and say where state or federal law offers a right, a benefit, or protection to a place that is on the National Register of Historic Places, this is the city's affirmative act, so claiming those rights, benefits, or protections. And so this would work in any situation where there's some sort of affirmative act to do that. But in particularly, there was a new state bill this year called Bill HB 1991, and it dealt with deployment of small wireless antennas and associated equipment. And in that bill, it generally has a scheme where wireless companies are allowed to either co-locate their small wireless equipment on existing poles, or in some situations where existing poles are not available, to set new poles in the rights of way to hold their wireless antennas. And these wireless antennas are colloquially referred to as the 5G rollout, and it is a different technology. Traditional cell phone technology, what you would see is very large antennas on top of very tall poles, and the industry is moving away or supplementing really that technology with smaller antennas on poles that are lower to the ground, because they use a different type of radio wavelength, a different type of technology to deliver cellular service. And so in HB 1991, it says that wireless companies can deploy these antennas in the rights of way, and the bill really limits the ability of cities to have a whole lot of say where those will be placed and what they will look like. However, in HB 1991, they carved out some protections for historic districts, or as the bill put it, areas that are zoned as historic. And so when they use that word zoned, that means that it was zoned through a public process going through the P&Z Commission. And so this bill has been through the P&Z Commission, and that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. Is we're taking our National Register of Historic Places, historic districts, and which are established through a federal process, and taking them through a local process, so that way they can fulfill the requirement of being zoned as historic to reach out and grab these protections that are afforded to historic districts in HB 1991. So first of all, generally applicable anytime that state or federal law would require an affirmative act to claim rights, benefits, or protections, this should accomplish it. But it also has the immediate effect of addressing such a state law. And the reason that staff is recommending that the rules be suspended to take up this bill this evening is because HB 1991 has a time limit on that, and it only applies to areas that are zoned as historic as of August 28th, 2018. And so if approved this evening, these areas would be able to take advantage of the carve-out protections for historic districts that's afforded under HB 1981. So we're trying to address a very specific problem, but also in the future, if similar laws come about, or if there's existing laws that we need to look at in the future, we have taken the step of saying where you are providing extra protections to historic places, we are reaching out and claiming those.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Molman? Councilman Graham?
So these are guaranteed exemptions?
Yeah, I mean, this is as close as we can hew to the law as I can reasonably come up with.
And how big are these towers or these devices that they're planning on putting
Sure.
just anywhere in Jeff
Yeah,
City?
so generally what we're looking at are towers that are they're not towers. They're generally utility poles, or so either street lights, electrical poles. So anywhere in the 30 to 50 feet range is pretty generally how they'll present themselves. And the way they get installed is either they'll get installed on the side, kind of bolted into the side of a pole. That's kind of an unattractive way to do it. Or otherwise they get placed on top of the pole and they kind of make it taller. And a lot of times there's sheathing or camouflaging techniques that go along with it. And what this bill would allow is to kind of work with cellular companies to make sure that if we have to allow these to be placed on a pole, we want them to look a certain way. It gives us more negotiating power to work with them to come up with a deployment that works for both the city and the companies.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, at this time we'll open the public hearing for 2018-43. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on that bill? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion and take up Bill 2018-43.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, changing, amending, and modifying the zoning code of the City of Jefferson by creating a new overlay zoning district to be titled the NR National Register Historic Overlay District, establishing regulations thereof, and amending the zoning map of the zoning code by establishing said district over 7 existing National Register districts.
Any further council discussion or deliberation? Councilman, I'm sorry, did someone over here? No?
I believe we need to suspend the rules.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to suspend the rules for
Thank you.
this bill here.
Thank you. Are there any objections to suspending the rules? Okay, so now do we have to read it again, correct? Okay, so now we will have third reading of 2018-43.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, changing, amending, and modifying the zoning code of the City of Jefferson by creating a new overlay zoning district to be titled the NR National Register Historic Overlay District, establishing regulations thereof, and amending the zoning map of the zoning code by establishing said district over 7 existing National Register districts.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Hensley,
I abstain.
Hussey, Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Bill passes. Item E.
2018-44, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 8, Buildings and Building Regulations pertaining to expansion of established local historic districts.
Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This bill would edit Chapter 8 of the City Code. Chapter 8 is dealing with building and building regulations, but as a portion of that chapter, the article within it dealing with preservation and conservation. This bill comes to you from both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission, as that portion of the City Code is really the instructions for the Historic Preservation Commission, so really under their review purview. But then also as a development-related code, it on advice of the Law Department, proceeded through the Planning and Zoning Commission and a formal public hearing process for recommendation by that body as well. The bill was initiated here at the City Council level by instructions from the council to staff to put in place some process for amending local historic districts in order to be able to expand the boundaries of a district, which was brought up by a number of the public during the public hearing process for the School Street Local Historic District. Up on the screen is the text of the proposed code amendment. It would essentially allow for expansion of a district by anywhere from a single property or up to 9 properties by petition of the property owner. That application would go through the Historic Preservation and Planning and Zoning Commission review before appearing in front of the council. Anything more than 9, so 10 or more properties would be processed in the same manner, requiring at least 75% of the signatures of that grouping, hopefully, of properties that would be proposed to be included within a district. The matter was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their August 9th meeting and was recommended for approval on a unanimous vote. It was also reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission at their August 14th meeting, recommended for approval by unanimous vote. It is scheduled for a public hearing tonight, as well as introduction, with potential rules suspended as this matter does deal heavily with the School Street Local Historic District manner, which is sitting on the informal calendar. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have prior to opening the public hearing.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Barron? Councilman Prather?
Just a clarification, this bill is just to establish the ability to amend a historic district?
That is correct. This bill has nothing to do with the School Street
All right.
proposal.
Thank you.
Councilman Mahalovich?
Is there anything that you know of that would preclude Quinn Chapel from being added to a historic district if one were established? Like the School Street?
With the passage of this process, putting something in place to allow for expansion of a district, then yes, Quinn Chapel could apply to be included in that district, if that's what your question was.
There's nothing that would preclude Quinn Chapel being included. I mean, nothing inherently within the language that would allow or disallow them to be included.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, that's good.
Any further questions? Councilman Graham?
So when you say they could apply, under what auspice could they be denied?
And so application has certain review criteria. It goes in front of the Historic Preservation Commission for, again, review and recommendation, Planning and Zoning Commission as well. Ultimately, it'd be a city council action to whether to approve or deny that application. And so it'd really be a question for the council.
So it doesn't go back to P&Z or Historic Preservation Commission, it just goes back to the council?
But first, it does rely on them applying, so they would have to make that decision to apply.
Okay.
No one can make that for them,
Right.
as a property owner. But if approved by the council, it would be approved. Denied by the council, it'd be denied. The council is the ultimate decision maker.
I was just trying to get some reasons why someone would be denied.
The reason for a denial would be because it does not meet the criteria, and so the historic district and the P&Z make recommendations. Does this meet the criteria? But ultimately, the decision would fall to the city council to determine, does this meet the criteria, and should it be added to the local district.
Councilman Hensley?
And at the risk of beating a dead horse, because it might not be totally clear, this paragraph, about halfway down, says applications to expand a historic district shall be reviewed under the same criteria set forth in subsection C and under the same procedures applicable to original establishment of a historic district. So it would go through all the same steps as the original application, right? Correct. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Councilman Graham?
I just thought that was the question that I was just asking. I thought it said it just come before the council for approval. But he just said it goes back to the original steps.
Correct. Ultimate approval is the city council.
But they need to go back through
But it would have
all
to
the
go
steps.
back through the HPC and the P&Z for recommendations from those bodies.
Councilman Fitzwater and then Prather.
I find it fascinating we're dealing with the bill to address a concern that was shared at the previous council meeting before we've even dealt with the issue that originally generated the need for this issue. At that meeting, I supported drafting language similar to this as a piece of a broader concept looking at the entire process, which I think we've potentially got some grant money that we think is coming to be able to do that process. I mean, my colleague asked a question, you know, again, it's going to have to go through a process. And it just fascinates me that we're dealing with an issue before we even have the issue, or we have the issue, but we're dealing with it before we even have a historic district that this is going to apply to. I mean, I support, and I think commented as we went through the demolition ordinance, which I guess has been about a year or so ago, concern or surprise that we did not have historic districts. So I support them in our community, local districts, done appropriately. But my comments at the last meeting were in regard to piecemealing this issue, not doing it right, and not having a track record of how we're going to do it for when we get application 2. So I'm probably not going to support this amendment, not because I don't support the local historic district concept. I just think when we do it, we've got to do the first one right, or we don't have a track record how we take this thing down the line. So those are my comments on the amendment.
Councilman Prather?
We were discussing a process, application process. How long do you anticipate that process to take?
There's really two parts to that. The first part is preparation of an application. That's on the applicant to do, and so it's hard to say, but it's a substantial amount of work. You can probably ask the people that's gone through it, and so there's no saying that's not under city control to figure out. But once an application is in, and it meets the requirements of an application, we're thinking that a 90-day process is probably where we're at to send it through HBC, P&Z, and then to the council. That's with no real hiccups along the way.
All right, thank you.
And just to make sure Councilman Graham's question was answered correctly, because I'm not sure if I either heard the question differently or heard the answers differently, but there was one answer that it doesn't go to P&Z and one that it does, but maybe I heard it differently.
It would go to P&Z, and I believe that is a requirement of state law under Chapter 89, is that a development type application, a change to land use and building controls, state law demands that the P&Z hear that.
Okay. Any further questions before we open the public hearing? Okay. At this time, we'll open the public hearing for 2018-44. Is there anyone here to speak to that this evening? Hi, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. I'm Nimrod Chappell, president of the Jefferson City NAACP, and I came forward today because I have some questions, and I too have a concern that maybe this process is being rushed a little bit, because there's a lot of questions like, what does a historic district do? How do you get into it? I've got people reaching out to me that think that they're in it, but they don't know, they don't have answers, and I was hoping that maybe we could just start there. What is it that this historic district would do? Is it one historic district, or is there many? And how do we decide what is the function of any particular district? Who's the sponsor?
I hope our city attorney can answer that, since.
Okay, I'm not sure what the proper process, whether that's the city attorney or the bill sponsor or what. You guys tell me.
Well, I see a local historic district as something that's formed by a neighborhood. They go through the process of looking into the history, the architectural design of the buildings, the age of the buildings, and then they go through a process where they get together to decide on the design guidelines that they want to meet when they have to do any exterior renovations to their property. Like if you have a brick building, any additions would be brick to that. Perhaps a district wouldn't want to allow front additions to a building because that would hide and detract from the existing architectural structure of that original structure. It could address setbacks, that you want to keep the same setback of your streetscape, roof pitches, window sizes, door sizes. So a district is more of a building regulation zoning code. It becomes an ordinance. So anytime any owner wants to do any type of renovation to their building, they would have to contact the city for a building permit, and then it would also have to go through Historic Preservation Commission for them to approve based on the guidelines that the neighbors turned in and the council approved as an ordinance, and they would have to get approval through the Historic Preservation Commission in order for city staff to allow them a building permit to do their restoration work.
Okay, thank you. How many applications are currently pending?
This is the first local historic district that has been brought forward to us.
Why aren't city ordinances currently governing what alterations can be done or in terms of buildings? Why aren't those sufficient?
Well, building codes usually deal with different types of structures, and when you're looking at a historic neighborhood, what is usually desired by those property owners is to retain that architectural style. So what pertains to a historic neighborhood wouldn't pertain to something out on Eastland or Scenic Drive, or, you know, so I mean, other areas do, I'm sure, have like their homeowners, what are those called? Homeowners associations that govern the same, well, not as strict, but this is something for a historic neighborhood.
Sure, sure. What's the difference between this and the gentrification that's already swept through Jefferson City?
I don't understand your
well, I'm talking about
your analogy, your parallel.
Using city resources and funds to facilitate neighborhoods and sections of this city to be reclaimed, if you would, to be changed in its nature. And so I'm glad that I'm here tonight, not only to learn about some of the other issues that have come up before this council, but on this issue in particular. We've already seen work go on in Jefferson City that has decimated what used to be, quote unquote, the foot or the black section of town, or held by a certain group of people. What is to stop a number of landowners from using this as a tool to come into a community and prescribe what's going to happen to the property that is either in that area where that person in the community didn't have a voice, either due to economic or socioeconomic reasons, or worse, when the person who's next to that district is either not allowed to participate in whatever benefit that district may offer, or required to be held to a higher standard to those homeowners.
Well, that's why we directed staff for this amendment, because after the district was submitted and it was going through its process, we heard from others who would like to be included in it. So currently our historic ordinance, district ordinance, doesn't allow anybody to submit an application to be included. I went through the same process in my depressed neighborhood on West Main several years ago, where I formed guidelines. With the historic district, you need 75% of the homeowners to agree to it. I only got 70. I say only, but that's a large amount for a neighborhood. So I was able to apply for a conservation district. But it's exactly the same thing. Anytime any work needs to be done in that area to preserve the history and the architecture and the character and the streetscape, so we can keep those neighborhoods that are so important to our history, like the School Street area, which is an extension of the foot area, then this is a tool to help us do that.
Well, if the School Street is an extension of the historic foot area, so is my neighborhood, right over there behind Mike Kehoe, right? I don't know of anything historic about that area, and maybe somebody else will have something more to say about that. But was there a city study done to determine what part of that was historic and why? What makes that historic?
Let me clarify a little bit too, just to make sure we're staying on this particular item. We're not necessarily debating whether certain districts are historic or not. We're looking mainly at the process. In the historic district that was brought forward, it was brought to council's attention that it may not be as user-friendly to apply, and so we're looking at ways now. Whether or not this bill accomplishes that is what's being discussed, if it could be made better. But staff was directed to come up with an ordinance that would make the process better. Not necessarily, we're not debating a specific district.
Sure,
this is just the
sure.
general process.
I don't mean
And
to debate
also-
the School Street
and I'm
issue.
not sure about I know we have I haven't seen the minutes guideline or the minutes on the screen, and I don't want to cut off any debate, but I know typically on the public hearing, I believe isn't it the 5, just since we have so many people here to speak, I want to make sure we don't go too far.
Well, okay,
out of
and thank
respect
you
for
very much.
everybody.
Well, let me just redirect my last question then.
Right, and regarding, where you live, you could do the same thing. You could.
My home is not historic. I'm not doing
Well,
that. I understand you're saying that, and that's the
brought that
intent
up,
of this
so I just
particular
wanted to
thing.
say-
But this ordinance, in terms of what it will allow people to do, can be used defensively. We just got through this whole talk about signs being in somebody's yard. What would arguably be a constitutional right? I would think that by the time that somebody buys a home or has a home that's willed to them by somebody that's a part of their family, that the idea that this could be used as a tool to diminish their ability to actually utilize that as a resource by putting stringent guidelines on people who already have issues and are overtaxed in other ways. I think that there are some significant issues that need to be addressed in terms of this ordinance and the underlying one. And until we get all that stuff worked out, that there's no time to move forward.
Let me make one point. These guidelines were written by those who own those homes in that area and was supported by those who.
You're talking
own
about
those
School
homes.
Street, though, Councilwoman.
Well, that's
Right.
what we're
I'm not talking
about.
about School Street. I'm talking about any historic district, because School Street may or may not occur.
conform
Yeah,
district.
that's the
I'm
issue.
currently working on another one. So,
Well.
Any neighborhood that owns their property, they can come up with they could do the research.
I think you missed my point, and I want to know who in the city is reviewing the research that's been done in terms of establishing that a historic area is in fact historic. Who's that? Who's in charge of that? Do you have a historic research area within the city that will take that on, or is that being funneled through some other area?
We have a historic preservation commission that it went through.
And that made it through.
Yes, it went through P&Z and Historic Preservation Commission.
Well, maybe we need to start by looking at that. No more questions.
Thank you, and.
Madam Mayor, I had a question, a point of order.
Okay.
Are
Excuse me,
are
yeah.
we discussing
Councilman Prather.
the establishment of a district or the expansion of a district? I'm confused. I thought we just talked about the expansion. We're not quite to the establishment. establishing a district yet.
We're,
Could someone clarify that for me? To, I thought the public hearing was to expand, for expansion, not establish. Okay.
okay, pardon me. I'm not sure if on this public hearing, if they're here to speak on the item 44 or on School Street, which is the informal calendar number 21. We'll make sure everybody speaks that would like to speak. So there won't be a problem with that. Everybody will have an
No
opportunity to have their
problem.
voice heard. But there is an order here, and after the speaker, I'll see if these are here to, which item they're here to speak on. So welcome, and you can just state your
Thank
name and
Okay.
thank you.
And I'd like to say good evening, Madam Mayor and city officials. My name is Mentha Bakari, and I reside at 1310 Linden Drive here in Jefferson City. I would like to speak on this piece that is supposed to have been amended to allow inclusion as opposed to exclusion. And I don't know exactly how this language can go, but implied inclusion is in the original application where there's an entity that's mentioned in terms of its historical significance. However, that particular entity is now being told to apply. The other thing is I keep hearing about the architectural design. Well, the criteria for the application is one or more, but I see that there's so much concentration on the architectural design. I'd like to hear some language put together to correct that, to be an exception to the architectural design, even if it has futuristic views, but contains two or more installed pieces from the old edifice if that particular building was relocated because of eminent domain. I'd like to see some language like that incorporated in this so-called amendment so that in the future, if there is something that needs to be amended, we have an open area that we can look at. Now, of course, I'm thinking about Quinn Chapel right now, but if the language is changed the way I recommended, that if it's evident in the original application that this entity is indeed historic, which it is, in regards to Quinn Chapel. And if the architectural design is futuristic in view, but has many of the materials from the old building in that it was relocated because of eminent domain, perhaps in the future you'll have the same scenario. And if this language can be redrafted to include those kinds of things, we have no problem, do we? Thank you.
Thank you. There is a list here for the public hearing, so I will go through these names in the order they signed up. And I know there's a lot of things on the agenda tonight, so the public hearing is Bill 2018-44 about expansion of established local historic districts. And then the item on the informal, which will be after we take this bill up, the next one will be 2018-21. So for those that are here to speak on that, so the first one we have is Erica Willis. Welcome.
Yes, hi.
Hi, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. So, I'm not sure. So, I am a commercial realtor with H&H Brokerage Group. I am here with my broker, Andrell Husman. we have been charged with helping to sell the Lafayette Street project here in Jefferson City. I will say this, that representing developers to come in and provide services to the area would be a lot easier if we didn't have to go through many layers, such as an historic district designation, because it can hinder progress with the said developer. And you know, when they're coming in and they're looking at working with city and revitalizing areas that are lacking services within a 3 to 5 mile radius, they're really looking at traffic counts. They're looking and considering the demographics of the area. So I do honestly, on my side, implore you to really consider the effects that creating this historic district would add to the further development of the area. I think it's primed. We do have some interests from area developers, and you know, again, I just go back to the fact that just adding layers, because it can create somewhat of an obstacle to continue development. For instance, even being able to tear down and completely start over to provide services to the area. You know, there is, you know, within a 16-mile radius, you know, to service the school, Lincoln University, as well as businesses and residents surrounding that area, that, you know, when they come in and they look at an area, you know, it just adds more time for a developer to have to go through and kind of fight through city government to be able to provide the services that they were commissioned to do. So I'm assuming I was put on the agenda to share that information. So I really implore you once again to really consider that as a fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. And then next we have Andrea, or if you were together.
My name is Andrea Hoosman. I am the broker and owner of H&H Brokerage Group, and as expressed, we have been brought and solicited to assist in the progress of the Lafayette Street project. And as I have witnessed and know the area very well, as my parents were students at the Lincoln University and have watched that area digress, to give it an opportunity to see regrowth, to give it an opportunity to see retail movement and commerce come back into our community, it is really critical that we offer that to this community as we talk about historic, or we talk about minority communities that don't, you know, that don't have that development. We were giving an opportunity to see that back without allowing us to be moved out. So if we can put that type of commerce in place, along with recognizing some of the historic concepts like our church, and keeping those in place, perhaps we can take all of that into consideration and making sure that as we make decisions as a city government, that we look at the entire environment as a whole, not separating anything out, inclusive of the most important piece, and that is our church. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Question.
Councilman Mahalovich.
I think there might be a little confusion here. We're debating Bill 044.
I'm sorry.
We're debating Bill 044 as public testimony right now.
Correct.
And that is to determine whether or not Quinn Chapel could be amended into the historic district. So without this amendment, Quinn Chapel could not be a part of the historic district. So the amendment.
And what we're trying to express is whether or not it truly is a historic. Quinn Chapel truly is historic, but they're trying to hold on to homes in which don't necessarily have the true historic value.
So
is that correct?
Do you favor the amendment that would allow Quinn Chapel to be a part of a historic district?
I favor Quinn Chapel being a part of the project in its inclusiveness.
And how does this amendment include or disclude what you want?
I don't feel like we should hold on to properties that don't hold or sustain a value of historic nature, and I think that's part of the question. Whether or not, I think there's two different components to that. Quinn Chapel has been excluded from the initial conversations. That was one thing. Okay, and so that's where I've expressed my concerns. As far as identifying whether or not these properties are of historic value is the true question in value, and whether or not we need to put any substance in making that determination. So I'm not supportive, no.
Thank you. Next, we have Carol Beavers. Is Carol, and if you still want to speak, well, we'll go through the list here, and then whoever, even if you're not signed up, you will still be able to speak. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Carol Beavers, and thank you, Mayor Turgeon, and city officials. I reside at 726 Lafayette Street, and I would like to state that I would support a change of the wording where it regards to and it's not up there anymore, but being the extensions being abutted to the historic district that's in question. And the reason I state that is because there, as has been stated, the true community or historic district has been fragmented, and so there are other properties in the near adjacent area that was ravaged by eminent domain and by the unfinished urban renewal from the 60s and 70s. That neighborhood has been fragmented, and I think that there are other property owners in my area of Lafayette Street that would like to probably eventually apply to be included in the historic district. So since we're right now just talking about the historic district itself, I mean the wording of the how to apply, there are other properties that may need to be taken into consideration, or they'll kind of be piecemealed by themselves to form their own historic district. So that's my comment, and if we could have a rewording of the term abutted, that would be under consideration of expanding that even to areas that have been separated due to such items as the eminent domain.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, next we have Charles Jackson, and I'll run through the list after Charles. Andrea, and then Robert Haslag, Julie Rungert, Chris Graham, Rich Callahan, and Patsy Johnson, Jocelyn King, Sheila Logan, Daniel Green, and I can't read that one. Homer. Those are all the names we have signed up under public hearing, and then we have Mr. Chris Graham under the charter amendment, charter change bill. Okay, pardon me, and then and anyone, and Glover. For something else? Yes. Okay. So if I call your name and you're here for something else, you can just let us know, since we have everybody signed up. So welcome, if you'd like to.
Madam Mayor, I was here for Proposition C, the charter change.
Okay, for charter change as well. And next is Andrew Sartonis. Okay, so charter change as well. And then Robert Haslag. Okay.
First, a point of inquiry. As I understand it, part of this resolution is to make it easier for districts 1 to 10 buildings that are adjacent to a historical district to come in without going through the whole process again, correct?
I don't know if I could speak to easy or not, but it provides a process to add to it, establish.
As long as the process is starting from ground zero.
It's a similar process as the original application. but it's a process that would allow someone to join an existing district.
Okay, well, let me get to the point I want to make then. Regarding Quinn Chapel, first of all, I would like to echo the sentiments that have already been expressed here tonight. And the only thing I would like to add is that everyone seems to miss is that a building is not historic simply because it looks like something. A building is historic because of what the people that are involved with that building have put into it, what they have committed to it, and the work they have committed to making it a part of Jefferson City for an extended period of time. And I have essentially the same concerns as the other people have expressed, that Quinn Chapel, because it has a yellow brick, or because the doors don't meet a specific size, or because the windows are a specific way, or because this is not right or that is not right, fails to recognize the fact that by its very existence, Quinn Chapel is a historic building in this community. And I would strongly encourage the council to look at it that way instead of, is the building old? Does the building look old? Are the windows the right size? Are the doors the right size? Or this or that or so forth? And I know Quinn Chapel partially has used some of the elements of the building that it originally was. But it's my real concern is that we're missing the whole point of what is historic about Quinn Chapel and what a historic building can be. Okay? And that's the point I would like to make to this council, is you may have to look at how you're defining historic in the first place. And that's the point I would like to make. If anyone has any questions, I'd be delighted to address them.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Julie Rungert? I don't think I said that right. R-U-E-N-G-T? Is Julie here? Okay. Mr. Chris Graham? He might be here to speak on a different one. I don't think he's here now. And I don't think Rich Callahan is. They might have been here for the other item. Patsy Johnson, I think for the charter. They might have been here for the charter. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and council persons. First of all, I want to thank you all for all you've done working to help with this historic district and having your people go back and work to provide a venue for other properties to be able to be included when a historic district is established. Oh, I forgot to say my name. My name's Patsy Johnson. I'm a resident of 908 Lafayette Street. As our neighborhood area is 1 block away from the proposed historic neighborhood area. And since this avenue is presented to where the language in the amendment is presented in the way it's presented, there's a possibility for a change. And I am asking on behalf of my family, neighborhood friends, and the neighbor in which we live to have that amendment change. The rule of budding, to have that language taken out and or modified to say I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. To say close proximity with shared history, because that's what we have. We have that in that area. And I'm in total support of the amendment, but with that change. And also in support of the historic district. the homeowners in the area that we are in, this is my block. I care about it. And the people in our area and my neighborhood are to the most part, supportive of this, because we stick together and try to support our neighborhood and keep it intact. Because when the demolition order was proposed, or was put in place, and if these homes are picked off and turned into green space, it affects the people that live in these homes, that want their homes and they want to be able to do better. And it also makes our entire neighborhood unstable and vulnerable to more picking off. And it's not like these are empty homes. These are homes that people raise their kids in, that they live in, that they care about. They've invested money in it. This area has had a lot of things that have changed, some tearing down and breaking up. But the bottom line is, we want to preserve, we want to revitalize, and we want to do better, and work together as a neighborhood, and we're united from School Street, the people that live in the homes, the homeowners and property owners, all the way to Roland Street and Lafayette and up in this area, in supporting the stability and preserving of the neighborhood and working together in doing so. So, preserving these homes and changing the language to close proximity with shared history brings us all together. It's not like, and it allows the property owners not to, on a block away with the same shared history, not to have to form a district themselves. So I just appeal to you all to vote to change the language of the amendment, to allow the people, and to vote for the historic district.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you. And next we have Jocelyn King.
Thank you. I'm Jocelyn King, 901 Rolling Court here in Jefferson City, Missouri. And it's a pleasure to be here with you again. After what I can just heard from Pepsi, I can just say ditto. I am in firm agreement with changing the wording such that from abutting to close proximity of shared history. It's just kind of crazy how things worked out. Basically, these neighborhoods are split up by the tennis courts. And I can say, well, the tennis courts are historic in themselves. If you want to mention that the Van Horde tennis courts, the first coach of a Lincoln University team to win all state. But we won't go there. We can find and pick up on a lot of little historic nuggets around this area that with this wording we can add on. And that's very important. I heard someone say, well, why don't we just make all of Lafayette Street an historic area? I think that's a good idea too. But I think it's just because it started the way it has. We have a way to get things going, and we just can keep building step by step. And the council is open-minded. If some other change, amendment is needed down the way, I'm sure at least we can bring it to you and you can consider it. I also would like to say that I lived at 802 Lafayette when I first moved here in 1970. And most of the people living there then live there now. They're still my neighbors, only I moved 2 blocks away. But also, with all those years and what they've invested in their homes that still look very, very nice, but the homes are old. And the people there, well, there are a few who've reached over age 60. And they would love to live out their lives in their homes. But at this point, with the FEMA regulations, it would be very hard to do quality of life improvements and repairs. And if there is something, lightning strikes or something, that's just unavoidable, they would have to go through the stress and everything of moving, leaving, trying to be resourceful with other resources to get things done, living in uncertainty. And I just feel that even though it's not a guarantee, the only thing that can be there for FEMA to think about allowing a waiver on their restrictions is this historic district status. So I would love to give my neighbors this boost of a chance, okay, so that these restrictions aren't, you know, devastating to them, or they don't know what to do, or what to do next, or how can I do this, how can I do that? And being a neighborhood is all about looking out for each other. And I don't want to see, you know, bringing on this, doing that move, you know, would slight them who have invested so much in the neighborhood for so many years. So that's what my concern is, and I appreciate your kind attention to this. And I hope we do reach a resolution this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Sheila Logan.
Hi. Madam Mayor, I'm going to sit here because my back is not saying kind words to me. I think everybody can hear me if I'm sitting right here.
Maybe we'll grab the microphone just so that those who might be tuning in who aren't in the room could hear your comments.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. First of all, let me say this. I am so excited to be here, involved in city government again. So I'm excited. I was very angry with the city when they took away my ramp, and the man told me I couldn't put another ramp up because I was in FEMA wouldn't let me because I was in the flood zone. I said, well, I had a ramp before, but so why you won't give me a ramp now? Okay, that's another story. Okay. Okay, fine. Oh, hi. Somebody just reminded him. My name is Sheila. Hi. Sheila Logan Sims, Symes. My address is 820 Lafayette Street here in Jefferson City, Missouri. Been here, I'm 73 years old, and I thank God for it. Hallelujah. Yes, I do. I am so glad to see that the council is moving quickly on things. Thank you for taking the note, taking the action, and getting that change in there on the planning and zoning folk. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I saw you taking notes over there, child. I saw you the last time. Okay, I saw you. Thank you for including Quinn Chapel, making it. Now, listen. Let me tell you something. I don't want Quinn Chapel have to go through all that yada yada yada. That historic, that y'all went through the historic thing, because you should have included them in the first place. Okay, okay. They should not have been excluded in the first place. So, do they have the wonderful old building? No. They would have a wonderful old building if it had not been moved twice. It had been moved twice. Once from down here by where the Central Motor Bank is, and then it was put over here on Lafayette Street, and it was moved again. Praise God, from whom our blessings flow. It was moved again for different reasons, monetary reasons, for either the city or central bank, you know, but it was moved. It ain't their fault. Guess what? That yada yada you talked about the building and all that stuff, and what it looked like. I can tell you what it looked like as it developed 73 years ago. I can tell you about that. But they have some of the stuff in there. I have to talk fast because y'all got a clock on me. I resent that, but y'all got a clock on me. But the stuff they have inside their church is reflective of their history. It's reflective of their history. You want to know about the history? Step inside the church. Don't talk to me about the building and what the edifice looks like. I don't care. Okay. What I care about is that the history of the church is still there. The building, the purpose of that building is still a church of praising God, from whom all blessings flow. Hallelujah, let them flow. Okay, but y'all get too busy and pass this thing. So, I sent you a hi. How you doing? I sent you a email telling you about the wording and stuff to help you with the wording and stuff to make it flow. So if you need, I'm thinking, did I put my phone number in there? I hope I did. But my phone number is 576-632-8795. I'll help you with the wording if you want me to. Because listen, let me tell you something. They've got to make it so it includes Quinn Chapel. You've got to make it so that I'm out there right on the creek. So yes, I'm on the creek. Hello, and I'm in the floodplain. But don't hurt me because I'm in the floodplain. Don't keep me from doing stuff because I'm in the floodplain. Fix it. So when they say floodplain people are in trouble, then I'm going to come to you and look at you, okay? And say, excuse me, I'm the one on the floodplain. I'm right on the creek. Fix me. I was really talking fast.
You were doing good.
Listen. Thank you very much. You know who I am. I gave you my telephone number. You have any questions? Anybody have any questions of me? I don't think so. Okay. But if you do, call me. Call me at home. I got 16 seconds, so you can't call me here. Okay. I'll talk to you all later, and thank you very much for allowing me this time. And listen, and once again, thank you, city government, for moving on stuff, for getting busy and making things happen.
Thank you. And then the two that haven't signed up, we have Mr. Glover Brown and Cassandra Gould, and then so.
You know, and sometimes I sit next to her in church. I have a presentation that they're going to put up. My name is Glover Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Friends of Lafayette and the Historic Foot District. I'm here tonight to say that I'm in favor of the amendment, but I have an issue with the amendment. I agree with Councilman Fitzwater in that in previous meetings he had indicated that he felt like that you all were piecemealing a resolution to a problem. One of the things that I looked at and I contemplated was, what is the effect of both the original amendment and the original ordinance, and what was going to be the effect of the amendment. The original ordinance set up what, in my opinion, the applicants created what I look at as disparate treatment. Quinn Chapel was treated differently than the other people that were in the historic district. Quinn Chapel repeatedly had asked to be part of the historic district. The reason that they were excluded, they were told, because their building did not meet the criteria for the design criteria. Now, when you look at disparate treatment, the people who are perpetrating the disparate treatment, they kind of slip up, because in the middle of all of that, it was asked of the applicants, did they mind Quinn Chapel being a part of their district? And at the very end, when their feet were being held to the fire, they said, oh no, we don't mind Quinn Chapel being in the district. So therefore, their original reasoning was a pretext. So I'm wanting to bring that out tonight. Now, when you look at the amendment says that Quinn Chapel can make application. But there has been news articles, I think it's been said here by city staff, that even once Quinn Chapel makes an application, that there is no guarantee that they're going to be included into the district. In my contemplation of this, I looked at, well, through direction to city staff, they were asked to find a way that they could include Quinn Chapel into the district. In doing so, they came up with this amendment to the ordinance. I've said before, it's like putting the cart before the horse. I agree with Councilman Fitzwater. You're coming up with a solution to something that doesn't even exist yet. So therefore, when you look at this, now we look at the next term, which is a disparate impact, is what the applicants did in the beginning by denying Quinn Chapel access to the historic district in the beginning. Did this create a disparate impact on Quinn Chapel? Well, we're looking at Quinn Chapel now has to make application. And in doing so, there's no guarantee that they're going to be included in the historic district. There was a gentleman at the last meeting that gave testimony that Quinn Chapel has the original steeple. There are pillars from the front part of the church that were included in the new part. And I think your city attorney could probably research this for you, but there was a case in New Jersey, St. Bartholomew, approached their City Preservation and Conservation Commission because they had a new building, but they weren't going to be included in their Preservation Historic District. But then they went back and they pointed out that they have the steeple from the original church. The city went back and kind of re-looked at that and rethought that, and I think they had resolved it with a special amendment to their ordinance. I'm again in favor of the historic district, but I'm going to ask that the council, because now we all know that it's on the informal calendar right now, and they can only stay there for a little while or it'll die. So at this point, you're going to get to the point where you're going to want to recall it off of the informal calendar. And I think the city council or councilor has advised you all that once you do that, then you can set it up to where you can vote on it at a later date. There isn't a window, but you have to do it in a reasonable amount of time. Now, I just heard the question asked of the city councilor tonight, how long would it take for Quinn Chapel to make application? He informed you that after they've made the application, it'll take 90 days. So I'm going to ask that the council reject both the original application and the proposed amendment to the ordinance. Now that you got it all written, all you have to do is put it in place when the time is right. And so all that we have been asking from the beginning is if you're going to do this, because you have a lot of people looking at how you're going to create this first local historic district, and they're going to be watching you, and you don't want to set a precedent to where they can come back and say, oh, we don't want these people in because of this. And then later go back and say, oh, well, they can make application, but yet the criteria is the same. Now, the wording on the amendment said that once the applicant has done the process, and originally they were excluding Quinn Chapel because of their design criteria. They're saying now that in the application process, Quinn Chapel can also ask that the design criteria be modified. Now, these are a lot of hoops and hurdles that Quinn Chapel is having to go through. If it were not for the fact, all they had to do was be included in the original application.
Mr. Brown, one moment. What's our time? Just so we get, out of respect for everybody who's still waiting to speak. Okay, it is at 0 in the back.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so again, all I'm asking is that tonight, don't throw away the idea of a historic district. Go back to what we've been saying all along. If you're going to do it right the first time, in agreement with Councilman Fitzwater. Make sure that all your bases are covered so that when you close one loophole, another one doesn't open. So with that, I'm through.
Thank you. Next, Reverend Cassandra Gould. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. First, I want to absolutely thank City staff for following the instruction and for City Council listening to the voices of the people, many of whom are not my parishioners, but recognize our longevity and our contribution in this community. But with that said, I agree that the language could be different in the amendment. My congregation was rather disappointed that in essence we basically, it's almost like we just start with a new application because the steps are literally the same to be included in this. And it really is a matter of being intentionally excluded from the beginning. Our name is mentioned in the application. Out of the 29 pages of narrative and there are approximately 22 and a half pages of Black history, our name certainly is mentioned in there, but then the applicant said they didn't know about us. So we were left out. And so I know that that gets into the School Street thing, but I think that there's opportunity maybe to make the amendment more flexible if possible, and we are certainly willing to do application. When we stood against this historic district, it was because we believed that they were using Black history as a farce, and we really speak, I'm with the rest of the residents on Lafayette. When our church was forced to move, we could have moved anywhere in the city, and our parishioners were intentional about staying in this community. What happens when lines are drawn and people are left out, it diffuses democracy. And so democracy has been diffused on the foot since the 1962 Urban Renewal Plan. And so there are a lot of people who look like me who've been left out of democracy, and really lines and districts and communities are ways that we mediate democracy. We mediate democracy. That's why you are council people of a particular ward and particular districts and particular precincts, because that's how democracy is mediated in America. And so democracy is diffused when people are displaced. And so our objection is really just about that, and really in honor of our ancestors who did not have the opportunity to change the fact that they were displaced. And so all I'm asking in this amendment is that it be a little more friendly, because the Lafayette corridor is historic. It is historic from the 900 block at least of Lafayette all the way back to McCarty Street on Lafayette. And so that really is the foot. And so all of this conversation about, well, we're kind of near the foot and all of that, that is the foot. That's the history of the Black community that I've known since the day that I walked into Jefferson City 8 years ago, than my parishioners who shared with me. And so if the amendment could be a little more friendly, or if there's opportunity for an ordinance that allows an application to be amended, because that is actually what would give us the reparations for being left out of the application in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Gould, what would you like to see change? So you mentioned at the end about it being more friendly, or you said the other piece.
So I think Ms. Johnson and others indicated about the language that restricts it to property that abuts the current district. Once you pass Quinn Chapel, you have no property until you get to Second Christian Church. And so what if Second Christian Church, who not quite as old as us, but they've been here 113 years or so, I think some of them are here, they can tell their own history, but that's the information that I have. What if they want to be in it? What if Lincoln and Quinn Chapel are really the anchor institutions in this community, but they're residents that make up the community. And so I would like to see an opportunity for what's actually the historic foot to actually be a part of this without going through a whole lot of stuff that makes us all start over.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, so I think that covers those who have signed up. So before we close the public hearing portion on this particular bill, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Mrs. Smith, and then
Good evening, everyone, and my name is Jenny Smith. I want to thank the city staff for responding so swiftly to creating this document that will allow for expansion of historic districts in Jeff City. Now, of course, this arose out of our application for the School Street Historic District, but I also would echo what Mrs. Johnson requested, that the wording be changed to, instead of saying properties abutting the historic districts, to say adjacent or properties in close proximity with a shared history, because the properties in the 700, 800, 900 block of Lafayette do share history with us, but we are divided by a gulf of green space between us and them. And it would be very appropriate for them to be added to the historic district, and as well as Quinn Chapel. I would respond to Councilman Fitzwater's remark about piecemealing, and that is that you will be taking this up later, our application for the School Street district. We've followed the code, and if that code isn't correct, it should have been changed before all of our effort to comply with it. So I believe that we have to piecemeal to fix this. And so this is part of fixing that original code. And I would really ask for your support of this amendment to the code, because this would apply to all historic districts, not just ours, if it passes. I would also add that adding Quinn Chapel to the historic district, or any other properties to the historic district, if ours is approved, it would be much less trouble to add one property or 5 properties than it would to start from scratch. And I think the city councilor realizes that there's a great deal more effort to writing an application for 27 properties as opposed to 1 or 5. So that's all I would request. And again, thank you for all the effort that you've put into this.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, actually, with the public hearing, that's not how it would work, but you're welcome to ask her privately, though, certainly. Thank you. All right, thank you. And then our next speaker. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and City Council. I've attended, everyone in this room I probably know, and I feel very close to. When I came here in 1979, I really wish I had lived in the historic district in Lafayette Street, but we moved out further and were told we couldn't buy property where we wanted to buy it. But because we offered the amount that the people requested, they had to sell us the property. And it wasn't because we didn't want to live on Lafayette Street or in that neighborhood. It's because we would have lost money coming from St. Louis and purchasing a house that was below what we had sold our house for in St. Louis. And now that's kind of getting into the part. I have been trying to study this issue, and I consider myself halfway intelligent. And I'm so confused about this because so many emotions are wrapped up into this issue. It's not about redeveloping the foot so we can have resources for the people that are not there, and I commend the people who want to do that here. But this is our neighborhood. They would lose money. And until you put the money up to redevelop the area, then I don't think we should continue to talk about that. Put your money where your mouth is. Amen. I'm concerned about the people who live on Lafayette Street and Roland Street and all of that area. They cannot do anything with their property. They're in the flood zone. This is about losing those homes and giving them some breath and hope. I used to come from a zoo and go to the foot. Where were the people then and the parents then? Why didn't we save the foot? But what we did, urban renewal, we have nothing. I'm asking the council, and I hope I have my facts right on this. What's on the table now is to amend to allow people to apply in order to be a part of the School Street Historic District. The application process has to be the process. Quinn Chapel needs to be in, but I'm not sure every other piece of property will meet the criteria. So it shouldn't be, we should get together and help write the application. You have people who have done this already. Quinn Chapel should be in. But all the other things that are clouding my mind when I go home tonight trying to figure this out, we're going to lose an opportunity. We're going to have another urban renewal because of the floodplain, and all those homes are going to be gone. And so right now I am totally confused, other than to say there's something that was presented in good faith. Let's move forward with trying to get the amendment to allow for them to allow other people to come in. And Quinn Chapel, I understand. You may think you're not going to be included, but I would hope this council, this body, would find reason to include them. But everybody that makes application may not be able to be included. We've been excluded for many, many years, but if we don't get together on what this is, we're relying on your influence to make it happen. And we only can rely on you all to make it happen. My time is up. I don't think I'm any more straight on this, but it's a lot of tension and confusion, and we're going to miss a great opportunity to have the School Street District and to include other properties in it. And I hope you all are looking at this to say, this is community engagement. We really want to make something right for Jefferson City and the African American families that live here and the people who have property down there on School Street. And yes, I would be living down there if we just said we just can't go out and live out on Primrose where we got able to buy a house, but we had to go to legal routes to do that. But I'm saying that it's a different time now. It's a different time. And if we're going to have historic districts, we have a good opportunity to have it. And I will apologize to anyone I've offended. It's time for us to come together and make sure we save that particular area. And so I hope you all do your due diligence and not get strayed. And it's not piecemeal. Black folks have always dealt with and been the product of piecemealing. This is an opportunity I think that the city can stand, but it cannot be that you don't go through the application process. If you don't get to the application process and you fail to meet the criteria, you're just not in. But Quinn Chapel is a different, and I used to go to Quinn Chapel. And so I just want to say to you, I don't know what I've said other than please kind of get through all of it and pass to allow to amend. And I think in neighboring communities, but like Patsy, in close proximity makes very good sense. So thank you very much, and I hope you all do your due diligence.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. And the direction from council was to find a way to amend to include Quinn. Coleman. What did I just say?
Johnson.
I'm so sorry. Jackie Coleman. Mrs. Coleman, I meant to say. That the intention, yeah, okay. That the intention by council, the direction at least was, at past meetings was to include Quinn, find a way to include them. So that's the direction we're all going. So just wanted to make sure that's clarified. All right. Any last speakers? Okay.
Hi, my name is Anquinette McDonald. I go to Second Christian Disciple of Christ. I do community missionary work. And just listening to everything that everyone has said, you know, I ditto what Patsy was saying that needs to be changed, but I also, you know, my heart aches because you all are trying to do the right thing and y'all getting right on it, you know, and I believe in my heart that you all are here to do the right thing, you know, and I appreciate it. You know, Second Christian Church is right. I mean, we had a lot of things, but if y'all do it the way that y'all say y'all gonna do it and make the change that Pastor was talking about, I believe that Quinn Chapel will have an opportunity. I don't believe that y'all would hurry up and try to make a change to not include them. You know, and I just want you all to know that, hey, I appreciate, you know, I'm not going to use big words because I'm not that type of person. I grew up. I'm 57 years old. I lived on Lafayette Street. I don't want to see no stores. I want to be able to see what memory we have left of the houses. My grandmother used to live in the alley. My aunt used to live right on Lafayette Street. And historical, it doesn't mean because you want to build a building or get something. It's not about that. It's about what we have left, you know. So what you might think is historical to put money in your pocket, that's one thing. And I'm not trying to disrespect anyone, but I don't want anyone to sit and say that Lafayette Street is not historical, because it is. You know, and to see you all, you know, do the work that y'all are doing so that this thing possibly can happen, I feel like we should not sit and try to tear you all down and just already say, hey, we're going to deny them. Okay, let's just hurry up and do this. You all don't seem to be that type. You know, because of the way that you all have worked to make this happen. You know, so I don't feel like you all should be, I feel like you all have been attacked. That's just my opinion, and we all have one. You know, but job well done. You know, and if we can sit and make that one thing possible so that maybe my church can come in. You know, it's a family thing. You can't take what memory that we have left. You know, I grew up in that area. You know, so I ask, and I want to just say thank you, because I feel that each and every one of you all will do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any last speakers? Okay, at this point, we'll have Mr. Reisick, and then we'll close the public hearing portion.
Madam Mayor, City Council, attendees, I personally would not want to be in an historic district, but I consider it more of a liability than an asset. But other people think differently than I do. A lot of work has gone into putting this application together. My suggestion to you, therefore, is with bill number 2018-044, the expansion of the district, either you postpone it or modify it to include some of the suggestions this evening, and bill number 2018-21 that you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this point, we'll close the public hearing portion and take up Bill 2018-44.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 8, Buildings and Building Regulations pertaining to expansion of established local historic districts.
Okay, council comments and deliberation. Councilman Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To propose an amendment and speak on it briefly.
Yes.
Thank you. I've provided this in paper form to Ms. Donaldson, and I've also shared the contents with the council prior to the meeting. And let's see. Happy to share some comments on it, or just go right into what it would do. Maybe I'll just go into what it would do. It would be to remove the sentence within 2018-044 that states such parcels shall be directly abutting the established local historic district, and to replace those words with such additional parcels shall be within reasonable proximity to and share historical features in common with the established local historic district. And that's the end of my proposed language. I think this is really a smaller tweak than it may seem. But I think it would go a long way to avoid unnecessary and sort of absurd unfairness in some results. Once the district is established, if we follow the method as currently drafted, one uninterested neighbor could cut off a whole host of neighbors down the line that might otherwise be interested. And and that would be, I think unfair and unwise. It would also lead to inefficiency because those folks would probably still be committed to pursuing that distinction, and they'd have to start all over with a brand new district. So you'd have neighboring districts with potentially nearly identical histories, but they are separate and distinct from each other because of this phrasing. I certainly understand staff's interest in maintaining compact districts. I think that makes sense. However, I really do believe that the reasonable proximity plus shared history pieces in here will sort of naturally lead to appropriately compact districts. Anything else I might want to say? Yeah, so a more user-friendly approach, a more flexible approach was mentioned by several speakers tonight, and I certainly agree with them in that. I've had some question about what reasonable would mean, and I'll admit right up front, and to sort of borrow a phrase, this may be the worst phrase that we could use, except for every other phrase that we could use. It would be, I think requiring contiguity is unworkable for a number of reasons. I think requiring, setting a limit of so many feet or so many miles or so many blocks could easily lead to sort of exactly the same sort of unfair result. I think reasonable proximity will depend on the specifics with respect to the location and the history of the established district and of the applying parcels. And I think that will actually work out in a more natural way than some might fear up front. So it'll be, it would be case specific, but I think it would certainly be more workable than what we currently have. So I again would make the motion at this time that we adopt this change.
So we have a motion to amend.
I'll second this. Second.
Any further discussion on the amendment? And Mrs. Donaldson, do you have that amendment clearly, or?
I have it in writing.
Okay. Councilman Fitzwater?
I just had a question then for our legal counsel. Is the term reasonable proximity or shared history a defensible term? Because we're going to get into a situation where someone is going to ask us is it 2 blocks, 10 blocks, 22 blocks?
When you use words like reasonable, it's entirely context specific. So it is, as Councilman Hensley indicated, it would be on a case-by-case basis and could only be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. So yes, reasonable is defensible if that particular case was in fact reasonable. It's circular, but that's kind of how it would work out, and anyone that would challenge it and any courts that would examine it would have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and make a determination, well, was that addition reasonable?
Further questions or deliberation on the amendment to the bill? Okay, roll call please on the amendment.
Hussey, Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich, Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward, Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
No.
Graham,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Okay, so the amendment passes, so now council can have further deliberation. There is a check mark by there if council wants to take that up to suspend that we would need a motion to suspend the rules. But at this point, we're still deliberating the bill. Any further deliberation or any desire to suspend the rules or questions, comments of council? Councilwoman Wiseman?
Yeah, thank you. Just to be clear about, for instance, a building like Quinn Chapel, because the facade is so new, if the Historic Preservation Commission or the Planning and Zoning Commission says, no, this doesn't fit within the historic district, we still are the final decider, correct? They can still come to us and go through all of those and they can say, the city council still gets to make that final decision, right?
City council's the final decision maker on that.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councilman Mahalovich and then Prather?
I was wondering if city staff had any comments with regard to some of the comments made about too many barriers, or we don't want to start all over, but is there any way to shorten the process? And I understand that you're doing this not for this case, but any cases in the future as well. So I wondered if you had any comment with regard to any of the testimony you heard with regard to why it is constructed the way it is.
If I may, I believe Mr. Molman pointed out that it has to go through the planning and zoning process, so that would be required, so that is a large bulk of that. And I'm sure the Historic Preservation Commission would want to have a recommendation to make to the council also. So it's working within that planning and zoning framework. We have to advertise that. It takes some time. We have to post it. And certainly the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think, can carry it over to a meeting. So there's, that 90 days is a, sort of I don't want to say worst case scenario, it can always get worse, but is a good estimate of how long it would take to go through the process.
If I may, I'm gonna add on to Sonny. A historic determination that does not go through the HPC Commission would draw an unwanted amount of criticism and any potential challenge. You need that determination, at least for them to hear it and make a recommendation to, for example, if someone wanted to take advantage of the 50% rule in the floodway and FEMA ever did an audit and they noticed that this was declared historical but never went into the HPC, to a historical preservation committee, I wouldn't want to have to defend that. So I think not only being good policy to send it through the HPC, it's also highly recommended from a defensibility standpoint if we were ever to get challenged or audited by FEMA. And then, like I've stated with the P&Z, I just think it's a demand of state law that these development type applications go through the P&Z process as well.
And I think that I think that deserves mention, that because we have city government is slow, it's a deliberate process for a reason, because we need all this input. We need the Historic Preservation Commission, who knows history and can rule on what they're to rule on, and then our planning and zoning is based on ward representation, and they look at it slightly different, and then it comes to us. I think the whole process is a deliberate, slow for reason, and the high bar we're setting for historic districts is reasonable based on what kind of changes we're making here. But I do appreciate it, although I don't like it all the time having to go through the bureaucracy.
Councilman Prather?
Was there a particular reason we were needing to suspend the rules tonight? I can't remember what we had talked about.
I think just timeliness.
Yeah, I think there was a desire to address the situation quickly and not delay unnecessarily. Maybe the School Street application is that this has been hanging around for a while, and it'd be nice to get some action on it. But there's no particular impending deadline that would demand it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further deliberation? And so a request to suspend the rules, though, would that be beneficial to Quinn Chapel to let them start this process to be included in the district faster?
I think that approving this would allow them to justify expending time and resources on pursuing that. So, with the sooner you get started, the sooner you can get it done.
So based on that, it would be probably beneficial to have a request to suspend the rules to allow them to begin that process.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Any further discussion to suspend the rules? All in favor say aye. Or I'm sorry, are there any objections? Thank you. Seeing none, we will take up 2018-44.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 8, Buildings and Building Regulations pertaining to expansion of established local historic districts.
Any further deliberation? Roll call, please.
Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
No.
Graham,
Aye.
Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey.
Bill passes. Now, before we move on to the items 6 and 7, I know we would like to move up, because right now the informal calendar is almost the last thing on the agenda. But we also have, and I think this might have just been, I don't think this was the intention, but we have item 7A and B. So could we take up, and I don't know if we need to amend the agenda, if council would be agreeable to take up 7A and B and then go ahead and have the next item, which is the informal?
I would amend the agenda to reflect such.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes. So we will take up now presentations from staff, consultants, invited guests. We have 2 this evening. Our Cemetery Resources Board annual report. They have been waiting very, very, extremely patiently in the back, and we appreciate them and all the work that our volunteers do on our city boards and commissions. So we have Mrs. Rebecca Gordon and Nancy Thompson and David Grellner.
You want to sit there? All right.
Welcome, and thank you for being here this evening. And
You have a
appreciate
very
you.
full agenda. We're going to try to be as quick as possible with this.
Thank you.
This is the annual report for the Cemetery Resources Board. The members are listed here, and Mark Schreiber is our council liaison. Tim Theroff will become our new president beginning with the next meeting. The Cemetery Resources Board was created in 2011, and it currently oversees Old City Cemetery, Woodland Cemetery, and Longview Cemetery. We are to assure the proper operation and maintenance of the cemeteries. We review maintenance contracts and identify resources to better the quality of these cemeteries. Our goals are to preserve and enhance Jefferson City history, improve the cemetery landscaping, restore damaged gravestones and monuments, improve the record keeping, improve safety for visitors, and we've also been trying to make this more accessible by visitors so that they can study the history that's there in a logical manner. And we also want to honor the Jefferson City founding families. This is an example of some of the restoration we have done this past year. The picture on the left shows the cap for that monument off, and it was actually down at the bottom of the hill close to Miller Street, and we had it moved to the top of the hill. Whoop, you missed one. There. The Herrick family vault. There we go. This is the Herrick family vault that we had repaired this year. We received $5,000 from the historic city of Jefferson to finance this. It's a rather unusual vault for this area, it being that it's all brick. Charlotte Herrick was buried there in 1897, and then her mother was buried later, and her father-in-law and her adopted sister-in-law were moved from elsewhere in the cemetery when McCarty Street was widened. This was a project that we undertook with money that was given to us by the Thomas Lawson Price Society. They gave us $2,000. We spent a little over $1,500 on this restoration. We didn't know who Sarah Walker was when we started, but we chose this because it was pretty representative of the other stones that we have that are similar to this. It turned out that we had Marilyn Gross do a little research on Sarah Walker, and she was the niece of President Andrew Jackson. Her husband was John Walker, who was the 4th treasurer for the state of Missouri, and they lived in a dog trot log house where the Bisher Funeral Home now stands. He was reported to have taken all the Missouri's treasury in one steel box, and he took it home with him at night. This was a particularly rewarding event that we hosted. It's the EER class from the public school system. They take gifted students from the public and parochial schools around the city, and they're in a special accelerated program. Their focus this year was on the relationship of people that were historic to Jefferson City and the existing buildings that were there. We hosted 90 students over 5 days, 2 teachers, 2 principals, 2 parents, and 1 service dog. And it's always fun to have students out there because they are so anxious to learn. We had our historic walking tour again this year. The weather wasn't very cooperative. We had about 150 people that came through in spite of the weather and competing events. We also focused on tying the historic people that were there in that cemetery to buildings around the city. We involved people from the community to help with the presentations, and we chose people that had a personal interest or personal knowledge. This is Steve Viley here, representing the Young family. He owns their home on Capitol Avenue. And we had Marilyn Gross. Did we miss her? Oh, Marilyn Gross was also, she represented Sarah Walker because she did the research on that particular. We have been investigating the possibility of QR codes as a way to allow the public to know more about the graves that are there and the people, the history behind the people. We put up some QR codes on temporary markers for this walking tour. And while they were helpful, when we started looking closer, we were concerned that something of a permanent nature might deface the historic value of the property, so we have abandoned that project. We're not going to go forward with that. One big star for us this year was the National Register application. We succeeded in getting this cemetery on the National Register of Historic Places. That lists it at the state level as well as the federal level. We're hopeful that this prestigious award will aid us in fundraising to do more of the repairs that need to be done out there. We continue to do beautification of the cemetery grounds. We've been successful in the west end of the cemetery. Fortunately, it's the part you see when you come up McCarty Street. The flowers are growing well there. They're not doing as well in other parts of the cemetery. We're going to be planting bulbs out there this fall and putting some perennials in the spring. For Longview Cemetery, we continue to oversee maintenance and record keeping there. We've had a number of cemeteries over the years that were located in and around Jefferson City, small cemeteries that got moved into Longview, and we had no record at the city of these burials. So we've been doing some documenting of these relocated cemeteries. We continue to repair unstable gravestones, and we are hoping to do some repair to some of the retaining walls this next year in order to retain the historical integrity of the cemetery. We will continue to improve the grounds. We have ordered some additional signage to go in the cemetery to aid the public in making tours through there. We're having one large sign that explains the historic nature of the cemetery, and then 4 smaller signs, one to identify the state lot where the early legislators are buried, another for the Clark Mausoleum, because it is such an important part of this cemetery. It's unusual. Joseph Clark was the one who gave Bragg Hall to the city of Jefferson for use as their city hall. Judge William Scott is buried at the back of the cemetery of Woodland Cemetery, has a tall obelisk, and we're going to place a sign there to inform the public more about him. He was a Supreme Court justice for the state of Missouri and wrote the majority opinion on the Dred Scott versus Sanford case, which was later appealed to the federal Supreme Court and was one of the precipitating factors in the Civil War. The 4th sign we're making is to identify the United States colored troops that are buried in the west end of the cemetery. We have placed an application for 12 tombstones to identify Civil War veterans that are in unmarked graves there. 7 of them are members of the 62nd U.S. Colored Troops, which was a group that was instrumental in the founding of Lincoln University. They gave their mustering out pay to the founding of Lincoln University, and we believe that these graves need to be marked and memorialized. We were successful in getting 4 of the tombstones from the federal government. We're working on the others, but have hit some snags because they died before death certificates, and we cannot prove the disposition of remains with the documentation we have available. So we may have to launch a fundraising project of some sort to help pay for these. They are pretty important to the history of the city and to the history of Jefferson City. Excuse me. As I mentioned, we have 25 additional bedstones similar to Sarah Walker's. This is how most of them look. The mowers have been driving over them for many, many years, and they're pretty much crumbled up. We have enough money left from the Thomas Lawson Prize donation and from their walking tour, and we also received some private donations. We're still a little bit short, but we want to do Daniel Colgan's next. He was one of the original citizens of Jefferson City. He owned the first store in Jefferson City, and it was located on the grounds where the Capitol building now stands. This is another example of the types of tombstones that we're going to have to be resetting. This is quite large and quite heavy. When they're allowed to lay with the exposed to the elements like that, the engraving eventually fades away and you can't read it anymore. And this is an example of the retaining walls that surround some of the family plots. It shouldn't be too difficult getting materials. For those walls that have fallen, the stone has been thrown to the back of the cemetery and is down there in the trees. But again, to retain the historic integrity of these cemeteries, it's important that we get these things fixed. I was trying to be fast. Were there any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson and the commission for the amazing work that you do. You are such a hardworking group and commission. It's amazing what you accomplish every year, and our community is very fortunate to have your dedication to preservation in our community. And we appreciate Councilman Schreiber for your assistance.
I want to thank members of the commission and Dave Grellner. You all have done a fantastic job with very scarce resources. And as we know, the Old City Cemetery is the oldest public burial ground within the city limits of the city of Jefferson.
And possibly in Cole County.
And it's a virtual who's who of early citizens from Jefferson City, including the state lot with 2 governors buried up there. So I would challenge the council that if you have not been up there, to the National Cemetery, Woodland, and then the Old City Cemetery, you need to go sometime, because it is truly a classroom in and of itself. So thank you all so much. I appreciate everything that you do. It's been a pleasure working with you.
It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you.
Yes, great work. And I know it's been a long night, but let's have you 3 come up along with Schreiber, and we'll do a fast picture. And if council would come up here, and maybe we could link your presentation to that and get some awareness in the community for all that you're doing. If you can stand up.
I am not Hensley's youngest.
Oh, okay.
I just called him out as the youngest. Carlos doesn't blame. What's to do with that?
Okay, then we have item B, Riverfront Access Update, and then we'll do a quick break after this for everybody. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Bob Gilbert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for your patience this evening.
Now I know I'm standing between you and a break, so I'll make this pretty quick. I know you've had a long evening. This hopefully will maybe be on the lighter side. It's really just an update. We're not asking for anything from the council, but wanted to update you. We gave an update to the Parks and Rec Commission last Thursday also on the progress with the project. We do have some PowerPoint slides and a video to share with you tonight, just to give you a little bit of a snapshot into the project. It's been going on for a while, and most of you probably know a lot about it. Some recent news is the land conveyance on the Capitol Complex ground has occurred and is officially in the hands of the city of Jefferson now. So the beginning of the trail, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight, is now city property. And again, bit by bit, we're making progress on the project with a lot of great volunteers. By the way, I'm going to mention Jim Crabtree is also in the audience with me in spirit and can answer all the questions after I leave. No, but he is there to help and has been assisting. You may notice the logo on the left, the Bicentennial Bridge to the Island. It is something that's new since you've probably seen the project in quite some time. A couple reasons for that. One is we want to set ourselves a deadline, and that's 2021. That's the 200th anniversary of the state becoming a state. This project, again, is not a state project, but it is on Capitol grounds and has a certain attachment to that, and so we believe that it brands the project well with the bicentennial and will help us in fundraising efforts as well. So let's just jump right into it. I've got a few slides to share, some of the images from the video. You can kind of see the renderings there. If I can, do I need to wave someone? Thank you. So the center picture, I like to show this in most presentations because a lot of people in the community just don't realize what the island is. It is very invisible in our community. It's very hard to find a view of the entire island, and this is a nice perspective view of that 30 acres of green space you see there. It's all forested, essentially forest and wetlands along the river, and separated, of course, by the railroad. On the right is in blue are the two kind of major focus points of our community. The state capitol is the blue box on the top. The blue box or the blue shape on the bottom is the MSP site. And again, 30 acres, about a mile in length between the two, and kind of anchored by two pretty major tourism developments for our community. So we think that's a great advantage for a park setting. So keep going, please. Next slide. This is a picture taken from the island side of the railroad, just looking back on the community just to show there are new views of this that I think our community has not experienced unless maybe you've been on a barge trip. Next slide. Trying to go fast. This is not a new slide. Most of you who've been on the council a while know about this, but just to show you again a reference point as to where this is, the circular thing on the aerial there is the Senate garage, and to the left of that is the Veterans Memorial on the Capitol grounds, and the red is essentially the bridge to the island. Next, yeah, if you see the green arrow, I'm going to reference that in a couple of photos here, and then the blue arrows, next slide, or next click. That's another kind of reference point in a future slide here. Go ahead, next slide. Another perspective view. I'll talk a little bit about flooding data here in a minute, but this photo actually was taken during a flood, so that we can look at again the Wares Creek Bridge over the railroad, almost inundated by water, but again the forest, primary part of the island up above that water. The next, yeah, that's where it begins with the green arrow, and it ends. The project, the Bicentennial Bridge, basically lands on the highest part of the island. Next slide. So if you go on a quick walk with me, we're going to start at the Lewis and Clark Memorial, and you all know where that is, kind of right northeast of MoDOT headquarters. And then the next slide is kind of right behind those statues, and we're walking along that kind of brownish sidewalk, and then we're going to take a right, and then it ends up right here. At the beginning of where the trail will start, the flag poles on the left is the Vet Memorial, and that same green arrow point I was talking about earlier is right there. Next slide. Just a rendering of kind of how that trail would start right by the Senate garage. Next slide. This one's kind of a dark photo, but this is the point right between the Senate garage and the Veterans Memorial where we go. Another slide there is showing some concepts of memorials that we can incorporate into that as well. And then I'm going to take you more, the rest of this is going to be on a video tour, okay? So we kind of started right where it was about ready to take off. So this is a video, and I think it does have some sound. Just some music, though. It's not me narrating or anything. All right, the audio is not working great. Okay, something maybe new since the last time you've seen this is those rail car replicas there. Those are over the Union Pacific Railroad right-of-way. One of the requirements of the permit we have received from the railroad is to cover the trail, obviously for safety reasons over their assets. And so instead of just putting a fence over the top, we are looking at this concept, which is 4 rail cars that basically serve as galleries for people to experience history as they go across this bicentennial bridge. You know, as we think about the bicentennial and the 200 years that the state has been in existence, obviously the river, the railroad, roadways, and even the airport, which can be seen from this side of the river, really are part of the history of how Jefferson City even came to be. So these walls are blank in this video, but those would be filled with interpretive panels that would be developed along with our potential donors that we're talking to about this. And then there are some overlooks, and this, as you see, is a little shade spot, another area where we can place interpretive panels and information for people to experience the history. Soon we're going to land here on the ground, and also a lot of things still to develop on the ground itself. This is where, again, we met with the Parks Commission last week, and they can work to brainstorm what they'd like to have on the island. We do want to make sure everybody realizes it's considered to be a passive recreational opportunity, so this is natural. We're not talking about any kind of development down there, but passive trails, fishing, just observing nature, being kind of on that ground. Some of these, the rest of the video really is the same kind of stuff, but showing some night views. We do have street lamps, or I guess I would call them trail lamps at this point, on the island as well, or on the bridge. And the video is a little bit dark here with all the lights on in the room, but you can kind of get the concept there that obviously working with your public safety departments, we want to make sure as we get to designing all this that it's up to snuff with their comments and remarks, which we've been talking to them, but it's been quite a while. So I'm going to maybe kind of wrap up here. This thing is going to keep going. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. We'll go ahead and hit the next slide to keep this moving along. I know you guys have a lot on your agenda here. I do have a quick update there. On the next slide is actually flood information. This is frequently a question that we get from the committee, from the public as we present and talk around the community. We'll get there here in a minute. Okay, I want to point out that a lot of people kind of think this floods very often. This does not flood in a flash flood kind of setting. So this is on the Missouri River. It takes a continental kind of event for the Missouri River to flood. So I want to make sure everybody realizes that. This photo is an aerial with the blue representing the flood, which I think of as kind of the one of most recent history or record, December 29th, 2015. You may not remember that exact day. I happen to, because I was in Herman, Missouri with my wife on an anniversary trip, and we were stuck because all roads in and out of Herman were closed. And this event, December 29th, 2015, the Mississippi and the Missouri were so full that all interstates in and out of St. Louis, Missouri were closed. So it takes a pretty major event to even get up on the island surface because of its undulation. But if you look the next slide, or hit the next button, that yellow area is 13 acres of the 30 were dry even in that event. And the bridge that we have laid out lands on that point. A lot of the data here has been reported in the News Tribune already, so I'm not going to maybe go through all of that. But basically, we looked at the records. We looked at it last 18 years, 5 times, 22 total days of water. And as you might imagine, if you look at a lot of your other city parks, or especially any state parks, which are along natural resources, you're going to see more frequent flooding than this. So it's a comment people make, so we wanted to bring that up. And I think that might be it. I'm going pretty quick. Oh, a real quick update. A lot of the images there are fairly small, but again, as the bicentennial bridge and the theme has developed, our committee is working hard now on kind of the final stages of fundraising. So we are meeting with individuals, companies, groups to discuss fundraising opportunities on the project. And again, not asking anything of the council, but want you to be aware because we are talking to folks in the community. and excited about the progress that's been made, and especially about kind of how this project has developed over time into something that we believe is going to be a real asset for our community and for tourism here. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or Jim can certainly help as well, but I'm going to stop there.
Thank you both for being here and giving us this latest update. I could not be more excited about the progress that's being made on this project, and seeing the concept is just really incredible, especially the video when you go through the train cars on the bridge is just really a breathtaking and exciting concept. So does council have any questions this evening? All right, thank you, and we'll look forward to working together and learning more as it continues to progress, and look forward to the fundraising. So,
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. With that, we will take a 5-minute break and come back here in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. Let's go. Did anyone order pizza? Okay.
He's not doing good. He's got cancer and Alzheimer's. Gloria, they both never work. He's over in the wing where so she can walk over and see him. Okay, I'll tell her that you like that. I sure will. Lee won't remember, but I'll tell her. All right, I'll tell her.
Tell them I'll come back the next time.
Are you just talking about Yeah. Huh? Where? It's all the way down at the bottom.
Specific bills are
No, I want to talk about planning and zone code enforcement. I think this is our councilman right here, in second ward.
Sure, why not? No. This is the other councilman that we award.
Oh, I got two of them.
Just speak to him.
I need to talk to her. Or Dina. So when I asked him what they do, about a piece of property out of the way. Somebody having to trash out when they do it. See if they do. They ain't doing nothing in ours. Hey, sweetheart.
Watch TV, man. TV's on you. Where is it? All over it. All over.
Hey, that's all right. Every Facebook post I saw at my retirement at Kenny's birthday was me kissing my mom for the. I said, I caught more flack for that.
Sure.
space. I looked over there several times and you weren't there. Oh, that's the problem.
Okay, I think we'll call the meeting back to order. So, at this point, we will take up, we're going now to item 14, the informal calendar. We had moved that forward. So, that is item 2018-21. So, I would probably ask our bill sponsor, Councilwoman Ward, if you intend to bring that off the informal, or if how we want to handle handle that bill.
I'd like to direct to City Council, how many more times can it remain on informal? It's a total of 4. We're at the 3rd right now.
No. Well, yeah, including when you put it on, it would expire if nothing happened at the very next at the next meeting, the September 4th meeting. Then it would not appear on the 2nd meeting in September. So there'd be one more meeting after this one where it could be pulled off.
Okay. At this time, I would like for it to remain on the informal.
Have it remain? Okay. Would that, how would that impact at all the progress on adding Quinn Chapel? It wouldn't put any delay on that. Okay. All right. So that will remain on the informal. Okay. So there's some bills introduced and bills pending here, or a couple other things here before we get to our, where are we at? So we can have item 10, presentations, announcements. Do we want to go through all that, or should we try to accommodate the people who are still here on other bills, or just keep going through the agenda? Okay, we're going to keep going. Item 6, we have no appointments. Okay, so basically, we're going to go ahead and we're starting now with the agenda with item 6, and we'll go through the remainder of the agenda. When we get to item 14, which is the School Street item, that will remain on the informal calendar. So Councilwoman Ward will leave that on for the next meeting to be taken up at that time. So no action tonight. Okay. All right, so item 6, there's no appointments. Item 7, presentations, we've already had. Item 8, announcements by the mayor, council, and staff. And I'll start with my announcements. I have that the city of Jefferson won an award from ESGR, which is the employer support of the National Guard and Reserve. So last Friday evening they had a banquet, and we won the 7 Seals Award for our support as employer support of those in the Guard. And it's an honor for us to receive this on behalf of the city. And we appreciate all of our employees that serve our country, and that we can help them and assist them. And to win this award was really wonderful, and we will hang this here in City Hall. But wanted to take this opportunity to thank those who serve, and many get deployed for various things, and we are proud that we can show that support to those who work for the city and also serve our country. One other thing, today, the First Lady, Governor Parsons' wife, Teresa Parson, and I, along with Claudia Kehoe, Lieutenant Governor Kehoe's wife, welcomed students to Special Learning Center, and it was a great way to kick off the school year, seeing all the little students come in. And one thing she said, Teresa Parsons said, well, I'm not here as the First Lady, I'm here as a Nana. And she really was, and she was like having a Nana right there with all these kids, and was so great with them. And then it was so cute because one little girl said, my Nana's a Nana too. And it was just the cutest thing. So she really connected with the kids, but I just say that because, for one, it was great to have her connecting with our community, We appreciate Special Learning Center for what they do. It was great to see the students come back, and they were very excited to be back. And to everybody who's going back to school, we appreciate all that are in education in our community, and we remind everyone to be safe within the school zones and to be aware as everybody's going back to school. Other council announcements, any committee meetings or council announcements this evening? Councilman Prather.
We have our budget meeting this Thursday, 5:30 in these chambers.
Great, we will be there.
Hopefully the last one this year.
Last one, okay. Councilman Mahalovich.
Is there a P&Z meeting that same night? Oh, it's I have the wrong week. Okay.
All right. Any other announcements by council? Okay. Item 9, Lincoln University Student Representative Update. Ms. Carolyn Winjaro.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council as a whole. I just have 3 updates, and to begin with, I want to say Casino Night was a great success. Thank you to Madam Mayor and all council members who were present. This past weekend, we had freshmen move in, and we had over 300 plus freshmen come into the university and join the Blue Tiger family. We officially start school on the 27th, which is next Monday, and all returning students will be coming back on the 24th. So we look forward to having school back in session, and also a reminder about Dr. Woolfolk's inauguration, which will be on October 5th at 10 a.m., followed by the inaugural ball at 7 p.m. at the link. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winjaro. Item 10, presentations from the gallery on specific bills, and I'll start with who we have signed up, and then we'll let's see here. Start with Charles Jackson. I don't know if he's still here. No? Yes? Or no? No. Okay, he's gone. And Andrew may be gone also. Sartoris? I'm not sure. Sartoris, okay. Chris Graham and Rich Callahan, Dan Green. Okay. So, Mr. Homer. All right. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Homer Cavett. I live at 326 East Dunklin. I'd like to ask you all a question. How would you feel if I bought some property next to you, rented it out, and my tenants would throw their trash in your backyard? I can just imagine what you would do to me. This is a problem that I have. I've got landlords who don't live in my area, live out on the other end of town. Last spring, we got a letter from the city, several homeowners on my street, that we need to clean up our alley, or the city was going to take action against us. Okay? I get letters, information on the people that's dumping the trash, call the police. Just the other day, they referred me to code enforcement. Code enforcement says there's nothing they can do, their hands are tied. What do you do?
Well, I wonder if we could connect you with staff to see what specifically is happening there. Would that be maybe Mr. Sanders?
Well, what I'm saying is, why isn't something done to the landlord?
Well, I know I think you're speaking on one of the bills that's introduced, the item 12C about
right.
the single-family residence and duplex
Yes.
units.
Why isn't anything being done? Why, when I go to the city, I get referred to everybody else? Why do we have code enforcement? Why are these landlords being able to rent in the middle of the city, live out in their beautiful homes, and talk about the city, all the things that's going on in the city? That's what upsets me.
So you're in favor of the bill?
I'm in favor of whatever can be done with these absent landlords to do something about their tenants. All right. Why do the tenant I mean, the landlord get away. I gotta pick up their trash. Now, here's the thing. I thought about this, and I know you all don't want this to happen. But what if I take the trash, pick it up, and take it out to their beautiful neighborhoods and drop it in their yards? I bet something would be done then.
Well, thank you, Homer, and we will, the bill that's
No.
being introduced is supposed
You're
to try to
saying
address
thank you.
that.
You're saying thank you, but this has been going on for I don't know how long. You know, I don't want to hear thank you. I want to see something done about it.
All right, and if you would like, if you'd like us to connect Sonny or Mr. Sanders about your specific area as well that you were just talking about. Councilman Ward. I'm sorry, and it's Homer, and could you spell the last name just so we get it correct?
C-A-V-I-T-T-E, the third.
C-A-V-I-T-T-E, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are in Ward 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm your representative, and I know that area that you're referring to. I do get a lot of emails. I get a lot of phone calls about just trash in general there. And I do know that our Planning and Protective Services group does post signs repeatedly, and it just seems to be, and I live in that neighborhood, so I understand. My husband and I pick up trash along West Atchison every night, but that's, you know, that's beside the point. We will look into that. Our Director of Planning and Protective Services is here, and his inspector, I mean, I don't know what else I could.
You know, this is not the first, second, or third time. You got a big sign that says litter control area. City comes at me. The person who owns the property, nothing said to them. You know, a lot of their tenants can't afford a trash receptacle. This goes back to the city trash. You know, you rent to people who can't afford their trash. They're having a struggle. They're struggling to pay their utility bills. So how are they gonna pay for trash?
Well, we are looking at a bill right now that will change that to make the landlords responsible, whether it's single-family duplex or multiple family dwelling, that the landlord has to supply the trash.
Well, that bill should have been passed 3 years ago.
Okay, we are working on it.
So if you read about me dumping trash in somebody else's yard, you know why. Because I'm getting tired of it.
All right, any questions? Okay, next we have Mr. Nimrod Chappell Jr. signed up for charter amendments. Or, I think it says charter amendment? Is that correct? Okay,
I'll be very quick.
okay, welcome.
I have some concerns that were brought about with the charter process and that review process. I'll bring those up later at a different venue. I think everything that was here basically now has been tabled. So thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. All right, item 11, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, bills introduced. We have 2018-45.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 30, Solid Waste, Article 1, Code of the City of Jefferson, pertaining to the definition of responsible party.
Mrs. Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a presentation. Sorry. And I'll make this quick tonight. The proposed bill would amend the Chapter 30 Solid Waste article, changing the definition of a responsible party. Currently, the responsible party identifies or has a clause in there that the responsible party is the property owner, but the property owner may assign those rights to the tenant of single-family and duplex units only. And this amendment would change the definition of responsible party to just essentially reading the owner of the property is responsible to obtain and maintain solid waste or trash service. And the assignment of the responsibility of obtaining trash service, I do believe, was implemented in approximately 2009 with the cart system. And we, over the years, code enforcement, the inspectors are constantly encountering problems such as the what's up on the screen, 96 no trash service violations. And then the number 96 is during the period of November 1, 2017 through August 15th of 2018. This is just a photo of one of the property inspectors have encountered this property not having trash service. And if you take a look behind the door, trash is piled up to the second pane of the window in the door. And so total of 96, 80 of them were 1 and 2 unit rental properties, 80 of them, or 83%. 9 of them were 3+ rental units, or 7 were owner occupied. Illegal dumping is also another potential cause of having no trash service, where in 22 cases, 22 were traced back to rental properties. And what we mean by trace back is, you know, there was some identifying information within the trash itself. 3 were traced back to private citizens, which is only 12% of the illegal dumping. We have a accumulation of trash violations. Since November 1, we've had 352 accumulation of trash. 292 approximately, or 83%, were traced back to rental properties, and 60 were owner occupied. So staff, and taking a look at better ways to giving our staff tools to complete enforcement actions appropriately, we feel that changing the definition that the property owner is required to obtain trash would assist in curbing these figures down. Currently, a residential cart for a 65-gallon is $15.52 per month, with the single stream recycling cart included with that rate. That's the 2018 rates that began June 1st. I know I'm kind of flying through this just because of time, but I would be happy to answer any questions on this proposed amendment.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Abbott? Okay. Thanks. So now we'll go on then to 13. All right. Bills pending 2018-28.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a development agreement with F&F Development, LLC, pertaining to the redevelopment of the 500 block of Missouri Boulevard.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you. As clerk indicates, the development agreement with F&F. This is really concerning the St. Mary's redevelopment properties, but basically this agreement will transfer property to F&F that's owned by the city, shown as owned by the city. So it'll clear the title of some of that property, and in exchange for that, F&F is agreeing to donate additional right-of-way for construction of a greenway trail along Bolivar and Dunklin, and also pay $15,000 towards the construction of that greenway.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Marash? Any deliberation? Roll call, please.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Bill passes 2018-29.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, vacating and discontinuing a portion of the 500 block of West Elm Street right-of-way.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you. And if I could explain number 29, 30, and 31 with all pertaining similarly to the redevelopment of this old St. Mary's property. With F&F, where these will all vacate either right-of-way or easements, which are all shown in the packet on a drawing. But again, vacation of easement to clear up the titles of those properties, some old easements that existed from in-lot, outlots, things like that, maybe sewer easements, things of that nature.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Marash? Any deliberation? Roll call, please.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward. Aye. Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2018-30.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri vacating and discontinuing a portion of the 600 block of Walnut Street right-of-way.
And Mr. Marash has already given us the update. Any council questions, deliberation? Roll call, please.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2018-31.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri vacating and discontinuing utility easements in the previously vacated parts of the 400 and 500 blocks of West Miller Street, the 500 and 600 block of Harrison Street, the 600 block of West Elm Street, and an unnamed alley south of in-lot numbers 768, 769, and 770.
Any council discussion? Roll call, please.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2018-32.
An ordinance amending section 29-151, charge for notice of intent to disconnect, and Appendix Y, schedule of administrative fees, permits, licenses, and other charges of the Code of the City of Jefferson, Missouri.
Mr. Marash.
As clerk indicated, this would modify a fee related to wastewater bills that's currently in Appendix Y. I think it's set at $27. We have not charged that fee in the past, and this would modify it to $10, a flat fee of $10. Basically, this has to do with delinquent wastewater bills, and when we make an attempt to collect those, we do phone calls and things of that nature. If we can't reach those people, we do send out actual notices, place them on the property, so to give us a call and try to pay that bill. So it lowers that to $10. Roughly a bill for wastewaters could be around that $30 level. So we're trying to make it a little more affordable for the people who are delinquent.
Any questions or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Bill passes. 2018-36.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a supplemental agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for surface transportation program funds.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you. This bill would lengthen our time frame in that agreement. Currently, we have a grant to study the Clark Avenue corridor, beginning at the interchange there at McCarty and Clark, extending over to Atchison Street, I believe is the name. Anyway, but it lengthens the time where we've been meetings with Bartlett and West as our designer on this. This is a city-county project named in the sales tax, so MoDOT's very particular about the timeframes in these agreements, and this would allow us to keep working on that agreement. We should be actually having a public meeting in about the next month about this project to flesh out some of the options. So we are moving along, but this gives us a little more time to complete that.
Thank you. Any questions or council deliberation? Mahalovich? Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call, please.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Bill passes. That was, I'm ready to vote. That was the, I saw that little. Okay, 2018-37.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a $198,149 agreement with TEB Constructors LLC for the RWRF Dry Biosolids Building Project.
Mr. Marash.
Thank you. This is related to wastewater again, but basically this builds a building out at the wastewater treatment plant to house the biosolids, which are the end product of our wastewater treatment process. That would be a field land applied. It would help us have additional storage during wet weather times, so we bid a project. This was called out in our master plan, so we bid a little bit different project that was called out in that to save some funds, and we have this contract proposed with TEB Constructors.
Any questions or deliberation? Roll call, please.
Graham.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Hussey. Kimna.
Aye.
Mahalovich.
Aye.
Prather.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Bill passes. 38 through 42 are the charter amendments. A couple of questions out of respect for the people who came that left before they were able to speak. Can that be put on the, I guess it can be put on the informal even though the sponsor's not here since Fitzwater is a co-sponsor, correct?
Fitzwater's a sponsor.
I thought it said Hussey.
Says sponsor Fitzwater.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, thank you. It's been a long night. Now, the other thing is timing-wise, in order to get on the ballot, what was the timing on those?
It would need to, in order to get on the November ballot, it would need to be done at this meeting before August 28th, I believe. But you know, there's nothing magical about the November ballot. So if this gets put on the formal calendar, it would the next available election would be the April election.
Okay. Councilman Graham?
Madam Mayor, I know that Councilman Fitzwater is the sponsor, and he can put these on, ask that these be put on the informal calendar. And I would like to suggest that he do put these on the informal calendar. But not only that, I think that these charter changes are so important that these needs to be discussed as a whole, council level, maybe at a special meeting or something. But I think that these are very important, and I think that we should bring in the members who were a part of recommending these changes to have a conversation with them as well too. So I would recommend two things. One, that it be placed on the informal calendar, and then also we have a special meeting to address these different charter amendment or changes. And then if we need to bring in the charter members who's a part of that committee and get more feedback and dialogue as to the reason why these changes were being presented. Because to me, this is like changing our Constitution. And I think that we should take this, and I know we should take this very seriously, and so I will propose that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Graham. Councilman Fitzwater?
I appreciate the comments from my colleague in the Fourth Ward, and I echo his comments. I'd like to preface by thanking the members of the Charter Committee because they did an incredible job. They met a number of times. I think it was at all the meetings except for one. Councilman Hussey was at most of the meetings. Other members of council who weren't even responsible for it came in to pick up a piece of what was going on. But as Councilman Graham indicated, this is the soul of our community. I mean, it's a document. I've had an opportunity to talk to some of the members of the original committee in addition to the current committee, and I think Councilman Graham raises some good opportunities that all of the members of this council ought to have an opportunity to discuss the document, other members of the public, and I thank the members of the public that did show up because they had testimony at most of the meetings. So with that being said, I would like to put 2018, 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42 on the informal calendar.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzwater. And if you and Councilman Graham would want to talk about your idea to get council together to discuss, then certainly that would.
I think having a special work session to address these issues would certainly be a great start.
Okay,
so
thank you. Councilman, I'm sorry.
Just the logistical issues. For the April election, we would need final ballot language by mid-January. And so that's kind of the time frame we're looking at if we're looking at the April 2019 election, is that we need final ballot language by mid-January. So that's just for informational purposes.
Thank you. And certainly I do appreciate that. But for me, I'm not even looking at a date and time to get it to the ballot. I'm just looking at making sure that we got this thing right. And then we'll worry about the date for hitting a ballot later on. So my main concern is to make sure that we're getting this thing right. So, but thank you for that information, though.
Thank you. Item 15, resolutions. We have RS 2018-10.
A resolution authorizing the mayor and this city clerk to execute a letter of engagement with Gilmore and Bell PC.
Mr. Molman?
Thank you. This, of course, this resolution appeared in front of the council at the last meeting. There was some concern about some of the more open-ended provisions in this engagement letter with Gilmore and Bell to work as special counsel on the Missouri State Penitentiary program. And so I reached back out to Gilmore and Bell and shared the concerns of the council with them. And they sat down and sharpened their pencils and hopefully addressed some of the council's concerns, most of the council's concerns, with the open-endedness, and gave some more tangible time estimates, and then also gave a mechanism to make sure, kind of a checking-in period to make sure that we're heading in the right direction on this project before additional funds are expended. Particularly, what they have proposed is that they would cap billing at $25,000 until the city has selected a developer for the project, and the developer has escrowed funds with the city to pay for special counsel fees, or if the city council has made a direct authorization to expend more than $25,000. So the they're looking at a cost limitation of $25,000 through the selection of a developer process, which is a substantial part of the program that we would ask them to work on. And so I think that is provides some assurances to the council that we're not going to be having really large legal bills on the very first step of selecting a developer. Additionally, there was an addition that I added to the resolution that limits payment of invoices out of this engagement letter to the from the hotel and motel accommodations tax, unless otherwise approved by the city council. So the default would be that bills on this project would come out of the tourism tax funds unless the city council, for whatever reason, gave specific authorization to expend out of other funds.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Molman? Is there a motion? I'm sorry, Councilman Prather.
Oh, I'd like some clarification on where the money's coming from. I'd be against this if it's already stating we have to come out of the tourism fund. I know we can find the money elsewhere, but I just don't think we need to open that door at this moment. If we don't have to. So where specifically does it state the money's coming from in here?
Sure. It says that in section 3 of the resolution.
Okay, and it states that we have it, we could take it wherever we need it.
So
I don't have
what
the wording
section
in front of me.
3 says is that invoices incurred under the letter of engagement shall be paid out of the funds raised by the city's 7% tax on hotel and motel accommodations unless otherwise authorized by the city council.
Okay, so if we vote on that tonight and we pass it, will it come back to the council for approval to where the money is coming from, or you just automatically gonna take it out of the tourism fund?
That is where the money would come from when their invoices came along, unless the city council said otherwise.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time. I think we need to do this, but not necessarily the money from there. I think the money should come from another source. For example, the general fund. Just don't open that door yet for the tourism fund, because it's not necessarily for what we have promised the citizens, in my opinion, for our conference center.
Councilman Mihalovich?
Okay, it says, under section 3, unless otherwise authorized by city council. When would we make our first draw onto any kind of account for these services?
When would we make a first draw? If this passed tonight, I would anticipate having a conference call with the attorneys tomorrow, and so billing would start in August. We could see a first bill in the beginning of September for work in August.
So it could be a resolution to direct the funding for that to be other than this funding source, should we so desire, right?
Yes, if for whatever reason on September 4th we wanted to come back and say we'd rather that first bill get paid out of whatever, we could do that. And you know, it's, you know, if the point was in section 3 is to identify a consistent funding source, but also give flexibility if flexibility is needed. And I did that to reflect what I gathered out of comments last meeting. That's the reason that it's presented the way it is.
Any further council questions for Mr. Molman? Councilwoman Wiseman?
I just want to point out, I think this is a good place for the funds to begin to come from. This company has been involved in a lot of TIFs and involved in a lot of super TIFs. In fact, if I remember correctly, probably they're the only company that we talked about that's ever been involved in super TIFs. And I think that's what we're really looking for is trying to get other funding available, specifically paid for by the developers. So this is really just a jumping point. And I think that we could look at this on a monthly basis to try to supplement that if we needed to or wanted to, and maybe at the finance level. But I think we need a place to fund this, and I think that the tourism fund is a great place, because that's where we're going with this. We're going to look at this conference center. We're going to look at, you know, this area and develop it, and we've got to have some money to do this, and I think this is an excellent place to start. I don't think that it should fund all of it, and I don't think that it will. I think this TIF, this super TIF idea, I think are going to be really good other options that developers are going to end up paying for.
Councilman Hensley?
Thank you, and I would just like to echo Councilwoman Wiseman's comments, specifically with respect to the conference center. One of the things this is going to be looking at, or that this firm is going to be looking at, is project feasibility. And a big part of that, a potential centerpiece of the permitted uses in the transfer contract, you know, allows for a convention center, a conference center, a civic center. So I think that the funds that go into determining feasibility for such a facility would, you know, be appropriate to come out of the funds that are set aside for the construction of the facility. I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Prather.
It sounds like the door is open to make that decision at a different time, according to the wording, so I'm for this, to just move on and then decide that later.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve 2018-10.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, deliberation? Roll call, please.
Hensley,
Aye.
Hussey, Kimna,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Item 16, no one signed up. Item 17, council presentation topics. 18, new business. 19, unfinished business. 20.
I move to adjourn.
All right. All in favor, say aye. All right, have a great night. Thank you.